welcome all of our guests tonight, and then we'll have another opportunity a little later in the agenda to say thank you. And thank you to all the parents who are here who are such a good help to us. And today is April 25th, and it is National Hug a Plumber Day. So I hope our plumber in our school district got a hug today. And if you didn't have a plumber in your family, today's Hug a Plumber Day. Please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1.3, board agenda approval. I would like a motion, but I would like to amend the agenda to eliminate closed session. We don't have anything for closed session tonight. So is there anything else about the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda as presented with the exception of the closed session.
Second. Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have the best part of tonight's agenda, and that is the recognition of our parent volunteers. And I would just like to say that I have been around this district for a very long time. Kind of when dinosaurs roamed the earth. But we couldn't do what we do for the kids in this district without you, the parent volunteers that are just tireless in their efforts in the schools, day after day, year in and year out. I said to one of the principals and one of the moms tonight, the sad part of it is we get really good volunteers and then the kids grow up. And we lose those wonderful volunteers, but there's always another great group to come along and take their place. So, so just thank you. I just can't say thank you enough for all that you do for our students. Anybody else on the board want to make any comments before we recognize them? Okay, so here's how it's going to work. I'm going to call your name. One of the board members will give you a little gift, and then we're going to ask you to stand up on the stage. And after everyone's been recognized, we will all gather up there for some pictures. Okay, so we're going to start with Blue Hills, Smita Banerjee. Collins, Chandon Moyna. Cupertino, May Bakken. Sivarkas, Nell Gamba. Dilworth, Jeannie Chan. Eaton is recognized in their PTO Executive Board, and Chelsea Aiello is accepting the award. Okay, she's not here. Eisenhower, Jasmine Tan. Faria Devendar Malareddy. Garden Gate, Deepa Srinivas. Hi. Oh. Thank you. Hyde, Celia House. Kennedy, Ajit Dash. Lawson, Sophia Chan. Lincoln, Rochelle Chu. McAuliffe is recognizing their parent community, and accepting the award is Manuela Silvera. Meyerholtz Tara Dowdell, I think. Miller Jamie Chan. Montclair Fiona Moat. John Muir Ruby Liao Lu. Murdoch Portal Yoon Jin Lee. Nimitz Lana Martschink. Regnart Bernadette Carano. Sedgwick Lisa Parker Kim. Stevens Creek Heidi Johnson. Stocklemeyer Jenny Morrissey. West Valley Libby Shen. Congratulations to all. After we get the pictures, we will break for about 10 minutes for a little reception. We can greet everybody, and there are goodies at the back. So, Lord, can we get a picture? Item 2.1, employee organizations. Do we have anyone to speak tonight? Kyle?
School Board, Dr. Baker, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. At the last school board meeting, you voted to eliminate the equivalent of 12 FTE instructional aid positions, and this has come as a great shock to my teachers. My special ed teachers really rely on these people for supports, and I've been bombarded with calls, emails, and texts from freaked out teachers, all asking, what is the plan moving forward? In the spirit of transparency, the district must alleviate the anxiety of my teachers. What is the plan to replace the supports the IA has provided? I urge you to have this conversation with them sooner than later, or I fear that next year we're going to be facing a mass desertion of special ed teachers and create a mass problem for your HR and hiring. Thank you.
Thank you, Kai. Anybody else? There's no public comment cards and no public comment tonight, so moving on to consent items, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move 4-1 through 4-6.
I'll second the motion.
Not 4-7?
No, for six.
4-7. Oh, the paper is different than the paper copy is.
Numbering is off.
One,
There's no 4-3 on the paper copy.
but
Yeah, just skip the number.
Okay, so
So let's go with what's on, posted online, which is items 4-1 through 4-6.
okay, then the motion is correct. Is there a second?
Second the motion.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
so then 4-7 will come back at another time.
It's not, there are still the same number, it's skipped a number.
It skipped 4-3.
So it's
So we
it's
just-
the exact same thing, it's just this
Yep,
number.
I got it. Okay.
Okay, on to 5.1, Next Generation Science Standards Update. Is that Marie?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Hello again. This time it's science, not math, so that's exciting. So I am, thank you. My purpose is to share with you information about our process right now that we're going through to be able to select NGSS aligned curriculum for kinder through 8th grade. And I also want to give you just a little update about the shifts that are taking place in the standards, which is what is driving the need to be able to get new curriculum. I know many of you are new, so you might not be quite as up to date on it, so hopefully we can just do a little bit of work around that. And then I just want to answer any questions that you might have regarding the process that we're going through.
And just, I'm going to make a quick reminder to the board, this is not a discussion item, it's clarifying questions only, so.
Yes.
Okay,
Would you like us to hold questions to the end?
it's up to Marie.
You can ask me questions, it's fine. Yeah. I won't be thrown off if you have questions, it's okay. All right. So, again, we're looking at the shifts in the science standards. We're going to be talking about that in just a sec. The process that we're going through, the tentative calendar for adoption of new curriculum, and then how we've been engaging you and the community at large. And we're going to be answering those. I will answer those questions that you might have, clarifying questions. So just jumping into the NGSS. At the top, we can see in that red area, this kind of shows what we used to have with science standards. It was really geared towards students receiving information, memorizing it, giving it back on a test. And then there was a process of doing science, maybe very prescriptive experiments. So we're shifting away from that now with NGSS, and it's exciting. We've got 3 different kind of buckets that the standards fall in. And you're going to hear now talk of 3-dimensional learning with science. So the first bucket is scientific and engineering practices. So that's the process of really doing science, getting in there and practicing what scientists and engineers actually do. And then we have the disciplinary core ideas. That's what we were used to in the past, the principles and constructs that we are learning about science. And then there's another bucket, which is the cross-cutting concepts. So that's the connections we make between different concepts in science. It might be cause and effect, it might be patterns, so things like that where it's these global kind of themes that are present in science. So all of these work together and they make those 3 dimensions of NGSS. So we see them as all intertwined like this rope, working together. And then we have performance expectations that we have for all children to be able to demonstrate their understanding and mastery of the standards. The other piece that's new in NGSS is that we really want to engage students in inquiry, and central to that is using phenomena to be able to start the inquiry. So something that will get them to really think and question and wonder. So they're not, wondering, well, why am I learning this? They want to learn it. They want to find out more. And in that process of discovery, they start to understand the scientific concepts. So it's more of what scientists do. And when we think about this, phenomenon could be something that is really exciting, that's found in the real world, that is either human-made or found in nature. So, this is found in nature when we see the aurora borealis, and it can cause kids to wonder, well, what is that? Why is that happening? It's so interesting. So that can just ignite the excitement, and then it might trigger the investigation that the kids will do. Or it could be a problem that kids are thinking about. So we've got this human-made problem that is in existence with that Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and that's a great problem to start to think about how to solve. But it also invites inquiry. Like, how did it get there in the first place? And how deep is it? Where is it? So these are the sorts of things that we want to jumpstart the learning in science. And then a large piece that we're really looking at is the science and engineering practices. So this is where we're asking questions or engaging in argument in a polite way, but really arguing the way scientists argue to come to an understanding. Or maybe it's modeling ideas or looking at data and analyzing it. And at the center of this, students are engaged in also creating their own investigations and following it. So it's a lot more student-centered now. So that's also super exciting. So I want to share with you our process and timeline that we're engaged in right now. And it leads up to the point in time when we're going to actually make a recommendation for adoption. So back in November, the state shared a list of all of the curriculum that was approved that we could look at. We could look at others, but the suggestion was, these are approved, check them out. So in January, our county office hosted a curriculum, an instructional materials fair, and the teachers that had agreed to be on this, they agreed to be on the science cadre or science lead team, went and looked at that curriculum. And they used a tool to do an initial analysis of the curriculum. And that tool was a pre-screening tool that was provided by the state, and it was developed by West Ed and a couple of other organizations. So it's a very robust tool, and there's many layers to it. So we just took an initial pass and started to narrow the curriculum down to about 6 sets for K-5 and for 6-8. Then we met again, and we started to look even more deeply using the next level of the tool, which was a paper screening tool. It's a more thorough rubric, and I'll get into that a little bit. So we used that to start to narrow again, and we got down to 3 sets of curriculum for each. Well, actually it was 4 for K-5 and 3 for 6 through 8. For 6 through 8, we also spent the learning day having all of the science teachers look at the 6 sets of curriculum so that they could really get eyes on it and give us feedback and share with us what their thoughts were about it. So that helped us to narrow down to the 3. And since then, we have been meeting with the science lead team from both K-5 and 6-8 to try to determine what our pilot materials will be that I would bring back to you after we complete that. So I'll come back in May to share our recommendations. And then the plan is in August that we will start our initial training for the curriculum that we want to pilot, and we'll do that. We'll pilot one set and then come back and do an even deeper analysis, and then we'll pilot the other set of curriculum and do a really deep analysis. So hopefully by around April of next year, we will have curriculum in both K-5 and 6-8 to bring to you as our recommendation for the adoption. So that's our big plan. In terms of community engagement, we have shared curriculum before we narrowed down to 2, before we narrowed to the pilot choices, and we've received some feedback. I still want to have a couple more sessions because some people weren't able to go and they were really interested in seeing it. There's so much of it that it's hard to have it all available at the district office. It's better to have it at the TRC to let them really take a look at it. And I appreciate those of you that came and saw it. That was really great. In addition to reviewing it, we're also going to have opportunities to be able to learn about the pilot materials before we start piloting in the classroom, and then also opportunity for feedback in April of 2020. So we've got different checkpoints along the way where we want community involved. The recent feedback, so as people have come from the community to check it out, they've given us some feedback, and it really kind of falls into 2 main categories. Presentation and usability is one category. So parents were sharing that they would really like to see that the curriculum has engaging imagery, or this was very kind. They wanted to make sure that it was something that was manageable and easy for teachers to use so that they don't have to spend hours and hours planning. They like the idea of smaller textbooks because there's a concern about the weight of backpacks and how much is manageable for students to carry. They like the idea of high quality videos and simulations. They saw a lot of evidence of that. And then also the idea of science notebooks for students was supported throughout. Folks were asking for ELD supports, and then there were a few errors that were found, and so there were folks that made note of that, like please find something that's free of typesetting errors. So it was nice that we received that information. The publisher that had those errors that we found has been very responsive, and they're doing a reprinting, so they will be fixing those errors.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Can you explain what you think the feedback was around student science notebooks? Like, are we talking journals? Or
Yeah. So they like that idea of having a journal that they're writing their findings in, and it could be designed in a lot of different ways, but they really like that idea of students keeping their own notebook like scientists do. Yeah. And then in the approach, they really like the idea of less memorizing and more doing of science and having a focus on hands-on learning. Some of them really liked the way that some texts were set out, where there were tips on how to read the text. And then they love the idea of starting with a question or activity around a phenomenon and really getting kids excited. Some folks wanted less reading, more investigating, and connections to English language arts, what they're doing, so that writing and reading connection, really trying to make that a lot more fluid. And then they also noticed that some of the publishers were really emphasizing California connections. So when they're talking about earthquakes, they're talking about our earthquakes and other components, like they were just pictures from California, and they loved that. So this is the paper screening tool that I was talking about. It's just a little snippet of it. Again, the tool is from Next Gen Time, and that's what it's called. There's various categories that we're looking at, really 5 of them. The use of phenomena or problems, logical sequence of the curriculum, students figuring out, 3-dimensional performance, and then we have some district criteria that we had set as a science cadre of other components that we knew were really important. So the teachers have been using this and looking for evidence to support the grade that they would give the curriculum. So I met with the 6 to 8th grade task force, and we went through a process that this was back, in early April, and we reviewed 3 sets of curriculum, and the sets were Discovery, Amplify, and McGraw-Hill. We listened to publisher presentations. The teachers were scoring all the way along. They talked before, they looked at the curriculum, and then they listened to the publishers and went back and revised. And they really determined where they thought that the publishers fell. Unfortunately, the teachers didn't feel like they were fully calibrated, and so they weren't completely confident with their results. And I learned from that experience, so I changed what I did with the kindergarten through 5th grade team when I met with them the following week. So I'll talk to you about the changes that I made. In this particular case, what I did, because I ran out of time, was I had the teachers give their individual vote, and I didn't spend enough time on having them come to consensus on everything. And I realized that's not something I want to give short shrift to. So we found that our votes, that's just sort of an example of the way they voted. It's not for any particular curriculum, but in a category we had some saying, yeah, it's a 5, and others saying it's a 1. That's not a calibrated vote. So I realized, okay, we need to do something a little different. So we will get there. We're meeting again in May, and I'm pretty excited about that. And we're gonna really work on what we did for kinder through 5th grade. So the following week, I worked with these guys. We looked at 4 sets of curriculum, Pearson, Foss, Amplify, and STEM Scopes. We listened to 4 publisher presentations, but we started out with working on that rubric and coming to consensus as closely as possible. And then when they heard the publishers, they asked questions where they had questions on the rubric. And afterwards, every single group, so I had smaller groups, they had to come to consensus as a group on every element of the rubric before they reported out to the whole group. And we had a much higher success rate by doing that. And so what you see are the posters from that experience. So like team 1, it shows for Pearson, there's 5s all the way down, but then team 2 didn't have that same result, and we had to discuss the evidence that they had to support that claim. And once we did that, then we were able to really get to consensus, and they heard from other people, and they were like, okay, I get your point. So this consensus approach is really the way to go. And then at the end, what we did, we still have those little sticky dots there. We said, okay, just for good measure, let's go ahead and give a green dot for your top choice, your number one, a yellow dot for your second choice, and a red dot for your third choice. And that's how it fell out. So it looks pretty even. On our third choice one, there were a lot of the red dots. So it was their close third. So in addition to that, we're also looking at ways to provide professional learning. There is a lot of professional learning that's going on for the science cadre. The teachers are becoming very well versed in the NGSS standards, which they're complex. So it takes a long time to really feel comfortable with it. So to support all of the other teachers in the district, we need to really put an emphasis on NGSS. So next year on the learning days, we're going to be offering some support throughout on 3 of the learning days. And then there will be, as I said before, a lot of in-depth analysis with the cadres. And then as we make a determination and start to pilot, there's going to be also even more professional development that's happening. And then when we have the adoption, there'll be even more. So it's just layered throughout. All right, so that's a lot of information for you. What questions do you have?
Any questions from the board? Lori, you want to start?
I do. This is so exciting to me, so, as a scientist myself. So I'm super proud of us that we're here so soon after the state gave us the green light. So yay us. So for the middle school, was some of the, or was it a struggle at all on the concept of moving forward with an integrated curriculum versus with a grade level curriculum? And if so, was any consensus reached, even if you didn't reach a consensus on the curricula you were going to pilot? Was there any sort of...
It's a really good question. So we have held off on making that decision just because we didn't want to leave any curriculum out. So the way that the curriculum's been designed, and this is by advice of the state, has been to start with integrated, and then if you choose to, you can design discipline-specific curriculum. And so some publishers have offered both, and some have not. So it's a little bit tricky, and yet we want to make sure that what we decide on has been designed with the true intent of NGSS. So it does make it a little bit challenging.
Because we've been doing discipline specific, right?
We have been, yeah. There's some that do both, and what's great about that is that if we chose to go with a hybrid model of integrated, which the 6th through 8th grade science team developed last year, it's possible to do that. We just have to look at how it's laid out. And there's some that have more components that can move around. But again, we're really trying to make sure that first we make sure that there's a strong connection to NGSS and it's well designed versus choosing something just because it's one or the other. Yeah, so it is a little tricky. And I think that because we went with the individual votes for 6 through 8, some of that showed up instead of us looking more closely at, building consensus and really supporting our position with evidence. So I regret not having enough time to do that. However, it's nice that we have May to do that, and I think that it's nice to have a full day where we're not going to have publishers there, and we can just really talk.
Thank you for honoring that process for them. I think giving you time for that is super important, so thank you.
Yeah. Drew?
Right, Marie, so first of all, thank you for that was a very clear presentation and for the work that your team has done. Really excited to see the science curriculum rolling out. I had some questions around process and some curriculum. I'll start with the process ones. And in particular, I wanted to hear more about your thinking on the pilot in terms of the scope. Are we going to do this at every school or some of the schools? The duration, how would you select the participants? Just whatever thinking, your current thinking is around the pilots.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for asking that. So we're thinking of having, my plan, at least this is what I'm budgeting right now, and I'm hoping that it works out, is to have 20 teachers from elementary, and really trying to have a mix of, kinder through 5th grade. So that's for elementary. For middle school, I would like to have 16 because I can have 3 from each school. Plus, I also want McAuliffe in there for middle school. I think it would make a lot of sense for those that are on the cadre, if they're interested in doing it. Not all are, but if they're interested in doing it, that they should have an opportunity. But then we also open it up to others. And for kinder through 5th grade, I think I might have a little challenge because there's so much that they are learning right now. But I also know that there's a lot of very passionate teachers who love science. So that's where I'm hoping I can get 20.
Right. And then in terms of the duration, you talked about coming back to the board in April, so.
Yeah. So I want to start out the year in August. It might be a little bit later for the K-5 because they're not quite ready for it yet. But I know the science teachers at middle school want to start with the curriculum pilot, and they would do 1 unit, and we're going to have to determine which unit and which curriculum we're going to start with. Then we'll come back together. We'll probably have about 2 months from the time that they're trained to the time we come back. That should give them plenty of time to complete that. Then we're going to use a deeper level of the screening tool that not only analyzes the paper copy, but how did the students, fare with this? What was your experience as the teacher delivering it? So there's just all these other layers that are going to fit in, and we're going to look at it very closely. And then we're going to have training for the second pilot, set of materials. They'll go ahead and teach that, and then come back and do the same thing. Then we'll come again together on a final day to analyze both and look at it and make our determination. So it's 5 days with the teachers where they're going to be either trained or evaluating. So it is a commitment for sure. Yeah. But I think we'll get a good choice by the end.
All right, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Satish, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Thank you very much, first of all. And so from the community engagement and the task force perspective, any concerns they raised, or would you be able to share some concerns if at all you had?
One of the things that that is challenging with the curriculum that the community sees is they don't really have the online version, and I can't give them a teacher version. So I've talked to the publishers about trying to present, open up something, create something that will be reflective of this curriculum online, because I don't feel like they get the full picture of what the curriculum's like if they're only looking at the paper version. Some of the curriculum has been designed for online use first, and then they have developed the paper version. So that's a little challenging. And then with that challenge, some of the publishers have printed, a tome of all the stuff that's online, which isn't really the way it would be intended to be used, but it creates a confusing message. So that has been a bit of a struggle. I'm trying to think what else has been a concern. I feel like they were so good at looking at it thoroughly. It was helpful. Mostly they were excited about the direction of NGSS. That's what I heard from a lot of people. Yeah.
So in general, it's quite positive overall.
It has been, yeah. And they're just so grateful to be able to look at what we're thinking about and to have the opportunity to talk with each other too. What I've noticed is that there's first this really big intensive look at the curriculum, and then people start to drop off and just start talking with each other, and it turns into a really nice event where they're just talking about their hopes and dreams for their children. Yeah.
Sylvia, did you have a question?
Yeah, I also want to say thank you because, having gone to one of those meetings, it was really great to see the commitment to the parents that were there. There were so many parents that came and that were so excited about science, and it's great to see that we're so committed to having parent feedback and parent comment come in. So I really appreciate you going through the process of first the teachers narrowing it down and then showing the parents kind of, here's the choices that we're looking at. My question specifically is about the middle school curriculum, because I think you and I were in a conversation with a group of parents who were concerned about the transition from middle school to high school, and there's a perception right now of a pretty big gap between 8th grade science and then 9th grade biology. And so I'm wondering what consideration, or if there's been any consideration with high school curriculum involved in this process.
We haven't talked with the high school about the curriculum, but that's a good point. I think that it definitely merits a conversation. So I've talked to them a lot about math, but yeah, I think that we also, in that conversation, though, did note that, some of the students were in AP courses, which isn't...
Just college level.
Yeah, it's college level. So we're looking at on-level materials for 6th through 8th grade, and I know that students they don't go straight into an AP course, but a lot of them by sophomore year are starting to consider AP courses, and it is quite rigorous. So it was nice that you were actually explaining that to them and helping them understand the difference between on-level and AP courses, so I appreciated that.
Yeah. But I think it would be good to get some calibration from those 9th grade, because biology we do know is at 9th grade level.
Yeah, it is.
So that'd be interesting to get some feedback.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Any other questions, Lori?
I do. So I'm going to follow up with Sylvia's, but then I have one other one. Do we know what kind of timeline the high school district is on for any sort of adoption they might be doing?
Don't know. Yeah.
Okay, great. And then, so much integrated versus grade level for middle schools. There was a slide in here that's where we're showing the K-5 task force and Pearson versus STEM scopes. And on your little picky dots, our favorite red, green, yellow dots, they're pretty evenly split between a first choice and a second choice.
Yeah.
There's 11 of them and 6 of them, 1 5 is on the other. So do you have any insights as to, were there any trends in who was picking one versus the other? Was it grade level groupings? Was it?
They all came up in a big swarm. Okay. Yeah, it was the end of the day.
Okay.
Right before their spring break.
Got it.
I was quite impressed with them.
That's quite a commitment. Yes.
Stay focused. They were incredible, really, truly incredible. Yeah. I loved working with them. With all of the science teachers, they're really committed and passionate.
Because much like what Sylvia was saying, as we were there at the curriculum viewing, I was noticing that some of the conversations I was overhearing, and even some of the conversations I was in, some of the parents that had younger children were really drawn to the curricula that in the text had, really rich pictures built in there versus some of the, parents who had the older students maybe were, spending more time at other tables. So did you see that at all in terms of with the teachers? Was there more interest in the younger grades versus older grades with different?
They're not so as excited about the colored pictures as they are about the hands-on materials. Mm-hmm. They really want to make sure that there's opportunities for kids to interact with lots of things and get their hands dirty.
And that's across.
That's across the board. Yeah, they're very to that. Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions, Jerry?
Yes, so as long as we're on this slide, so it looks like for K to 5, FOSS was looked at, they didn't make the cut, and I guess 6 to 8, whatever you end up with, it'll probably be different than what we have now. I was just wondering, any, I guess, insights or observations picked up from the cadre, I guess the differences between the two that we're going to be piloting and we'll end up with versus what we have now, FOSS or CPO science or whatever. I'm just kind of curious, given that we're making that switch, were there any sort of things that stood out that sort of encouraged the cadre to look at these other new publishers?
There were lots of comments. So to start with, for K-5, FOSS has been an amazing curriculum for us to use for quite some time. The disappointment that the teachers had was that it didn't seem like it was changed enough to really meet the intent of NGSS. It was fantastic. It is fantastic for what it was designed to do. But they found that some of the issues that they had with the online version weren't resolved, and then parts were just moved to different grade levels, but it was the same experience. So, and then there was extra things just kind of thrown in, so they didn't feel like there was enough continuity. And they were really sad about this. We actually had to take a moment of silence. We didn't expect that, we were, I think all of us were anticipating that we'd probably have FOSS and something else. So it was quite surprising, but it was based in the evidence of what we were looking at and really doing a thorough job in our analysis. And I think for CPO, I think that the teachers would probably, at least what I've heard from the cadres, that they feel like they don't use it all that much anymore. Like they use it as a guide, but they're filling in with so many other things right now to really make it more of an NGSS kind of experience. That is a very traditional approach. So FOSS was more cutting edge at the time. I think CPO was sort of that traditional, lecture style. You get the information, maybe you do an experiment, and then you try to remember it all for the test. I think they're really happy to look at other possibilities. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Satish and Sylvia, anything?
Yeah, I think I just might have to I think Jerry asked this question earlier and about this pilot, right? So are we for specific schools we are targeting or no? I thought you talked about teachers, but not about the schools.
Honestly, I will probably only have one person from for K-5, and I still won't. Well, I would cover every school, but it might be a kindergarten teacher or a 5th grade teacher. So we want to have all the elementary schools represented, and we want to try to get all the grade levels represented. So it's going to be a bit of a puzzle, but I don't think it would work well to have a majority at one school, because we want to have, we just want voices from all of the schools.
So if you are going to multiple curriculum, if you are trying to pilot, then we will split between the schools or
Yeah, so all of the kindergarten teachers will do one unit from one curriculum and one unit from another, and we'll analyze that. The same same will be for every grade level. And then we'll have to work it out in terms of the rotations of costs for them. So I can figure that part out. It's just, it's a puzzle.
The last one in that is,
Yeah.
is student involvement will be there and there will be a session for students to give the feedback or?
It's a good idea. I haven't thought that through. I mean, there's going to be definitely an analysis piece, which I haven't memorized yet what that looks like for that next phase. But there's definitely a component where we're analyzing how students did. So it's a good idea to ask them questions and see what they thought. Yeah, I like the idea. I'm not sure how much the kinders will be able to tell us, but maybe they give us thumbs up, thumbs down. Yeah. Some of them are very verbose, so, yeah.
Anything else? Lori?
So I got to go to Hyde's family math night, a week right before break. And it was, hands-on, and the people who were there were really engaged. And I'm wondering if there's any opportunity. I think, the concept of, the core content and the practices and then the cross-cutting is going to be new to a lot of people. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity there for our info sessions to maybe have a side feature of Family Science Night kind of vibe to it. If there's a way to, kind of incorporate both and
It's interesting. So as we get closer, we've got the pilot.
to experience it, in the fall, so the parents, maybe get a taste of what, because I think the shift is going to be big for parents. Over time, they're going to be like, wait, that's not the way I learned science, right? The same way that we had that with math or with anything else. So I'm wondering if there's a way we can make that shift to the practices, the content, the cross-cutting, have a, kind of the way you're talking about having the publishers have something interactive available.
I'm sure they would love it.
Maybe we can get them to come do it for us.
They would probably do it, so they'd be so excited to do that. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
And funded too.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, well, it's always good to go last because they got asked all my questions. So I'm good. Thank you, Maria. Great presentation. Really appreciate the information.
Thank you.
So the next item is Safe Routes to School Partnerships. Leslie?
Hi there, let me get my computer set up and introduce our guests. 1 second.
Yeah, this is also an informational, so clarifying questions, no discussion.
Okay, here we go. So thank you. So tonight we have City of Cupertino and the City of Sunnyvale here to present some information on the ways that these two cities are collaborating with one another to support all students in CUSD. I think one of the things that you'll note tonight, although they work for two separate cities, they do an amazing job articulating together, but also including students across our district. So they try to provide as many activities that are spread across all 25 schools. We as a district continue to work in partnerships with our other cities on Safe Routes to School, although these two have said, hey, can we come and share some of the new things that we're working on? So we've got Norma and we've got Cherie, so I'm going to turn it over to them. Okay, thank you very much. There you go. Okay. Thank you, Leslie.
Good evening, my name is Norma O'Connell. I work with the Department of Public Safety in Sunnyvale. I'm a Community Service Officer and currently the Safe Routes to School Coordinator.
And I'm Cherie Volkoviak. I just took over the program in the City of Cupertino in September, and I'm their Safe Routes to School Coordinator.
I'll just provide you a brief history on this Safe Routes to School program in the City of Sunnyvale. It was originally formed by the Department of Public Health in 2008 under grant funding. However, that grant funding sunsetted 2 years ago, at which point the City of Sunnyvale decided, okay, we want to keep this program going within the city. We'll keep it on a 2-year term limited basis and reevaluate at that point. Fast forward July of this year, they decided to keep the program permanently. And so that was a huge success for us, and now we're able to really start rolling out programming and education. So it's still, even though it's been around for 2 years, it's still in its infancy, just because we've switched gears now that it's been made permanent. And again, it's housed within the Department of Public Safety.
And the history of Cupertino's program is, it was originally formed in 2015 as a partnership between Cupertino, 6 Cupertino schools, CUSD, FUHSD, and the Sheriff's Department. It has since grown to include all 14 Cupertino schools and is led and funded by the City of Cupertino's general funds. And we currently have a full-time coordinator, which is myself, and a part-time intern at the city.
So Cherie and I are very fortunate that we work really well together, and we collaborate to improve the routes of students traveling to and from school, students that live in Cupertino go to school in Sunnyvale schools and vice versa. So we share space and we share resources.
The types of resources we share are educational materials and ideas. We attend each other's working group meetings. We share parent volunteers between our 2 schools who cross the jurisdictional boundaries. And we're partnering on infrastructure projects, 2 of which are on the upcoming slides.
Oops, that was what I was supposed to be doing. I'm going to do it then. So one of the examples of the infrastructure projects that we're working on, the first is the Homestead Corridor project. In June of 2018, the County Board of Supervisors approved funding to secure a consultant to develop a multi-jurisdictional conceptual plan for additional on-street safety improvements for Safe House School along the Homestead Corridor. The schools that the corridor serves are West Valley Elementary School, Cupertino Middle School, and Homestead High School. The study objective is to identify near-term pedestrian and bicycle improvements along the corridor that runs from Grant Road to North Stelling Road and a portion of Bernardo Avenue in front of Cupertino Middle School. Another part of the project is to seek funding for the identified improvements of this plan. This is just a diagram of the study area that they're doing from, like I said, Stelling to Grant, and just a small portion of Bernardo there, feeding into Cupertino Middle School.
So the study is complete. There were 2 community meetings. There were several, 2 or 3 stakeholder meetings. There was a walkthrough of the area. This website that's printed up here is where you can go to find the conceptual plans. And they're currently working on finalizing the plans, and that will be published by the end of the week. And the consultant is currently also about to identify funding sources for the projects.
Another project that we're collaborating on is the VERBS grant. It's a vehicle emissions reduction by schools. It's a partnership between Fremont Unified High School District, the City of Sunnyvale, and the City of Cupertino. The grant is to improve safety condition, again, for walkers, cyclists, and drivers right in front of Homestead High School, primarily in the areas of Mary Avenue at Homestead and Kennewick at Homestead as well. So this is an example of the preliminary design that the consultants have drafted for this VERBS grant project. I know it's a little challenging to read, but just kind of give you a brief understanding of what we're showing here. Homestead and McKenzie, they're thinking, again, this is still preliminary, it hasn't been finalized just yet. Homestead and McKenzie, they'll be upgrading the curb ramps, installing crosswalks, putting in green pavement markings, and green lines in the conflict zones on the south curb of Homestead west of Mary. Extending bulb outs at south curb of Mary and Homestead to shorten the crosswalk and sharpen the corner for vehicle traffic so that they don't approach it at a fast rate of speed. The review deadline will be this summer, The design should be done at approximately October of 2019 is what they're shooting for. And those are approximate dates. Construction is currently set to start about April of 2020, and to be completed, the goal is by December of 2020. Now I'm going to go ahead and shift gears into a bike rodeo pilot program that Shuri and I are working on collectively. So first I'm going to start by giving you a little bit of an understanding of what a bike rodeo is, just in case. It would include 6 to 7 skill stations that the students will cycle through. That would include a helmet fitting station, shoulder checking station. We would teach them. They would be taught how to navigate when they approach driveways or intersections, and how to navigate around obstacles. And it typically requires approximately 20 volunteers, and that's something that we are working with the Rotary Club to provide the volunteers. So that's something that Cupertino is working on their end, and on the Sunnyvale end, we are providing materials. And this would be a curriculum that it's still very much in its infancy stages, this pilot program, but we're thinking it's something that would be consistent across the city boundaries. So it would be the same kind of rodeo that you would see in Sunnyvale, and we would be sharing the resources for that. And we hope to implement it at 1 to 2 schools as a pilot, ideally 3rd or 4th grade, and during school hours if possible, and it would be approximately 1 hour long.
With the idea that bike skills really are life skills, we're really interested in incorporating the bicycling unit into our middle school PE classes. And we found a really well-written 4 to 5 day curriculum written by an organization called Bike Safe. The curriculum incorporates topics such as helmet fits, hand signals, rules of the road, bike fit, and other important skills. And there's an optional 5th day of the curriculum where they would actually use their bike and do a rodeo or a bike ride. We're currently working with CUSD's Ed Services Department to see how we can incorporate, if and how we can incorporate the curriculum. The Associate Director of Ed Services will be taking a look and letting us know next steps. We're hopeful that they give us a green light to pilot at some of the CUSD middle schools. One hitch is that this curriculum was written to Florida standards, but if CUSD is interested in the curriculum, BikeSmart is very interested in translating the curriculum to California standards. If this is adopted, it could be incorporated into any CUSD school, regardless of the system. And the last educational component we're collaborating on is a middle school bike skills series of one-day bike workshops. And so the reason we're targeting middle school is that it tends to be a really important age for kids to learn to ride on the road safely. First, their middle school tends to be farther away than their neighborhood elementary school. So if they're going to get to school without a car, they're more likely to bike than to walk. This is also a time when they're spreading their wings of independence, so they're less likely to want to follow behind mom and dad. And without adult supervision, their behavior, an adult supervising their behavior, it's all the more important for them how to learn to ride properly on the road and how to conduct themselves in a predictable, safe manner. Finally, they're getting close to the age where they can no longer ride on the sidewalk legally, at least in Cupertino, when they can only ride on the sidewalk through age 13. So if they're going to ride, they need to learn how to ride on the road safely. So these workshops will be open for anyone to sign up for. The series of middle school bike skills will be offered during the summer at the Cupertino Senior Center, and Leslie's actually going to be sending a flyer about these workshops to the whole district on May 6th. Thank you, Leslie.
That pretty much sums up our presentation for the evening. If you have any questions for us,
It's always nice to have updates from you both about what's going on in our city, so thank you very much. Board, we have one public comment, but we'll take board questions first and then we'll hear the public comment. So we'll start at the other end this time. Sylvia,
I think one quick comment before we get into the question. I do want to note that this is a little different of a presentation in that that's usually our staff are doing presentations, right? So these are guests. I just want to remind you of that, who asked to present something. If there are items on here that you want us to talk about and to bring, we can do that. We can do that up at agenda setting. I just want to make sure that these truly are just trying to understand what the city is proposing and working on, and not go too deep into the presentation, because they are our guests in that way.
So if I'm understanding you right, do we have you to ask clarifying questions of as well during this, or do you want us to save that for agenda setting because it has to come back?
Yeah, I feel like if you're feeling we should be discussing this at some time, then staff will put together a presentation as well as provide opportunity for that. It's just a little bit different because this was theirs. They requested to share something from the city, right? It's not from us as an item, because we have not been taking up these issues as a board yet, right? They aren't really our items. This is their presentation to us. Yeah.
And if I may, we actually had a couple of questions for the board as well, if it's appropriate to ask them.
It depends. It is not if it requires discussion, that's going to be a problem. But if it's just putting out rhetorical or just an idea, that would be fine. But because it's not agendized as a discussion item, we can't really have a back and forth per se.
Okay, so questions? Sylvia, you have a question?
Sure. So first of all, thank you for the presentation. When I looked at the slides, when I got them over the weekend, I was actually really excited about this, especially about some of the middle school curriculum ideas. And so it's really great. And thank you for the work that you've been doing towards pedestrian safety and light safety and car safety. I did just have one question about, so obviously it seems like Cupertino and Sunnyvale are working really well together. Just curious about relationships with the other cities. Do you work with the other cities mergers in our district?
At one point we were working with Los Altos, but the person we were working with has left.
Depending on the project, we will. The problem is that not every city has a hired Safe Routes to School coordinator. We were fortunate enough where both of our cities have us on board. But if we need to talk to Los Altos or any other city that we overlap with, and we find somebody in Public Works, my understanding is I do believe that Leslie is working on building more of those relationships. But like Shirley said, the representative at Los Altos is no longer here, and I'm not sure that they've found a replacement yet.
And I would say, as a reminder, we have a discussion item tonight around expanding our 202 committees to Saratoga and Santa Clara, et cetera. So I think that will be a venue for us to investigate that ourselves as well.
Any other questions? Satish?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Is there any other active projects other than the Homestead Corridor in Cupertino area that's going on?
There are a lot of active projects. They're not collaborative necessarily between the cities, but I'd be happy to tell you about the road projects going on in Cupertino if appropriate.
I can talk to you offline also, but just curious.
Maybe just list a few of the major ones.
Sure. So we're actually just about to embark on implementing our bike transportation plan. We're starting with a priority project on McClellan Road, where we'll be building separated bikeways in front of Monte Vista High School and Lincoln Elementary School. And that will start next month. We're also going to be building some separated bikeways on Stevens Creek Boulevard out near Cupertino High School, which is, I guess, not CUSD per se. We'll also be building some bicycle boulevards this summer in two of the neighborhoods near Lawson Middle School and Collins Elementary School and Garden Gate Elementary School. So those are the projects we're starting this summer, and there's a whole suite of other ones that are coming, including we're looking at doing a Ragnar Creek Trail, and that is actually going to council on May 21st. And if you are interested in supporting creeks, that can take students, that this creek trail will actually help kids get to Lawson Middle School, Eaton Elementary School, Cupertino High School. Kids from Sedgwick could take the trail to get to the public library. And there's a lot of opposition, so it's not a done deal. If you have an opinion, you're welcome to come and we sit at this on the 21st.
Okay, Jerry?
First, I also want to thank the two of you for Noel and Sherry for being here. I think it's a lot of times you hear people talk about they wish the different government agencies would work together better, and I'm really glad to see this collaborative effort. And then, Noel, I worked with your predecessor, Chelsea, when spin up Safe Routes to School. Lincoln, I think, was one of the regional schools, and I've certainly seen a difference that's made in the traffic around the school. So thank you both for your work. I had a number of questions. I guess I'll just try to keep it short here. I am curious what questions you had. So one of my questions would be what questions I know we don't have discussions, but I'm curious, I'd like to hear them. But I'm wondering, is there any linkage between what you're doing with the state level and, the Safe Routes School? That's a Department of Transportation thing also. I was just wondering, do you kind of work like the two of you alone, or is there linkages? Like PTA, there's these different levels, and you get material from the national PTA and so forth. Is there something like that for Safe Routes to School, or are you more independent? I've always wondered about that.
Well, we do work with the county group.
Okay.
In fact, we met with them just earlier this afternoon. So we work with the county public health department, and I know they follow a lot from the national partnership as well. So we certainly take a lot from, I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Oh, no, I think it does.
From the national and a county level.
Right.
And there is actually a Safe Routes to School National Conference in November that I believe we're both planning to go to. So
Excellent. That's
we're working on multiple levels.
all right. And I would love to hear your questions. We won't answer them, but I'd like to see what they are.
Well, we wanted to ask what your thoughts were on in-school bicycle and pedestrian curriculum in rodeos, and if it's something that the board would, and if it's something that we could perhaps incorporate into PE curriculum, and if there's anything that the board would like to see from us. That was our second question.
Thank you. Anything else? Lauren?
Of course they do. It's Safe Routes. Come on. So you mentioned that when you were giving us the great update on Hempstead Corridor, that the report is due to be finished tomorrow, by end of the week, so tomorrow. So the project website hasn't been updated since the end of February, so you're expecting that the public will be able to find that report hopefully on that website?
That is my hope. Yes, it should be updated. I don't know if it will necessarily be updated tomorrow, but I'm assuming that if they're releasing the study results tomorrow, they'll probably send it to the stakeholder agencies, and I imagine they will publish it within a week or so, but I'm not entirely sure
What their timeline is. Okay, fair enough, county timeline. So then the follow-on to that was, you said that the next piece that the consultant would be working on would be the funding. So do you two have an idea yet at all if there are things a school board, our role could possibly be as advocates, and do you have any thoughts or discussions that you've all had about things that we might be able to do as far as in that advocacy capacity to help with partnering with you to make a case for funding to grants and agencies? And or will you keep us in the loop on that, please?
Certainly keep you in the loop. That's something we haven't quite discussed yet. Just, taking it step by step. We wanted to get this first and then move on to the funding sources. That's nothing that, we haven't quite gotten there just yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly interested. I can't speak for my full board. It would have to come back and everybody would have to give you, we'd have to agendize it in a different way, but I know I personally would be interested in knowing, as a board member who advocates for our students, what I could do to help advocate for safety. With that,
that's something that we could pass along to the list.
That's what I was going to say, that's more of a staff thing.
Yeah, great, okay. I'm trying, that's why I asked, should I address to you, should I address to them? I'm trying. Okay, with verbs, I think you mentioned there was an opportunity for input. Did you say this summer? Did I miss something there? In their timeline?
You know, all I have in my notes here says the review deadline will be this summer. I do have more
Review
specific
deadline, okay.
deadlines that I can pass along to
Okay,
the city as well. I didn't bring that.
If that review deadline includes any sort of opportunity for input, can you make sure you pass that to Leslie so that, since that is, I mean, we have kids that come all the way from out from Wolf, so that we would potentially have kids traveling through there, so through Verbs, so.
There are a couple stages, actually, sorry, I just remembered.
Yeah.
There are a few stages where it will be open to input. I believe it's at the 35% mark, 75% mark, and so we are coordinating with the schools to get the input.
Okay, so just make sure Leslie gets any of that so that we can communicate to our families who, that in our attendance captures that would potentially travel through Verbs would be great.
Absolutely.
And then, I guess that one I have to save for our conversation later. And then, Sheree, you mentioned that there's a 13-year-old limit for sidewalks in Cupertino. So I guess my question for Cupertino would be, do you have any data around if we have hot spots where enforcement has happened, where maybe we need to put in a request for a walk audit or something to understand what's happening for kids in our attendance areas there? I mean, 13 is that tail end of our middle school kind of years, but if we've got hot spots around our middle schools where enforcement's happening, maybe we need to look at that?
I'm not sure I entirely understand your question. Walk audits were done at all of our schools in 2016, 2017. And periodically we do get requests from residents kind of detailing some behaviors that they're seeing, and so they ask us to come out and take a look, and we do when they request that.
So I guess where I'm going with this is if we have areas around our schools that are receiving more enforcement for kids who are riding on sidewalks, that might mean that the kids feel like there's not another option. And so then maybe that's an area for us to identify that we want to have a little bit more of a look at.
Are you concerned about the police telling kids not to ride on the sidewalk if they're too old? Is that?
Well, I'm concerned that if the kids feel the need to ride on the sidewalk, there might be a infrastructure reason there why, or kids not understanding signage, or something like that, that might be something that we might be able to, put in a request for the 2x2 with the city or something like that. So, I guess my curiosity would be maybe, is there data around, maybe I should say it this way, if there's data around any of our schools that where that behavior is happening often, it would be great to have that communicated so that we could talk about if there's any role that we play in that. And if the answer is no, then it's no. But
as far as I know, I don't think we have that data. If we did, it would probably, if that data existed, it would probably be the sheriff department that holds that data.
And then, so Sunnyvale does not have a rule like that, or has a similar rule, or?
So I believe it does state the same, as that it's up to 13 years old unless they feel unsafe. So if they are riding in the street and they do not feel safe, regardless of age, they can ride on the sidewalk. We do have a diversion program where if children are cited for not wearing helmets, crossing where they shouldn't, then we have all that data and statistics as far as where these are happening. And we ask them to, if they come to a class, the police department with their parent, where we do an educational component about how walking and biking safely, then that citation gets thrown away. It doesn't go to the court level. So I believe the sheriff's department may have something similar, and that's maybe where we can find data for Tina as well. Did I answer your question?
I think you did, yes. Thank you both so much for your time.
Anything else? Okay, well, thank you. We have one public comment that we'll hear. Stephanie Singer.
Hi, I've got now a freshman, so I've just got one at Cupertino Middle School. I wanted to thank the board and multiple cities and jurisdictions that are working hard to coordinate with our supervisor, Smithian, spearheading this project. And I just want to reiterate with the board for Cupertino Union School District that we need to apply equitable access to safe education to and from school based on challenges in both infrastructure and traffic patterns. And I urge our school board to continue to request and re-request, if already performed incorrectly, the necessary studies for places where parents and students have identified traffic pattern or infrastructure challenges that would be alleviated or remediated by crossing guards for safety in places where infrastructure is, in the long run, potentially being improved, but not currently. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, thank you again, ladies. Always nice to have you.
Thank you for so much.
All right, the next 3 items are discussion items. And the first one is schedules and costs associated with board advances, professional development, and other activities, right?
And I think I've had a chance to speak with each of you a little bit about this. It'll be a pretty broad, open conversation, and I'm not imagining it'll take a long time. I think when we were looking at the budget, to think about how do we think about the budget for ourselves for next year in terms of professional development, and for this year, what we have been spending, just trying to figure out how we plan, and we have not had a chance to discuss that really. So, I just wanted to put out, on the table, there were questions about calendar, I believe, and mostly around some professional development. And we said we would talk a little bit about what about the, what was it that you would, Saturday advances in place of, or a couple maybe in place of the ones during the week to help out with those of you working during the day. And then there's the question of the CSBA and conference that will be in San Diego in the coming year, and just noting that you all dove right into the MIG, the Masters of Government course as well, which is a whole other cost and the time on your part as well. And so you have data here that, generally speaking, we have budgeted around $3,000, the equivalent of. We haven't based it on you each get $3,000, but we basically budgeted about that amount. And the CSBA alone is about in San Diego anyway, is about a $2,100 expense for each of us. So I just wanted that on the table and wanted to just dive into a couple of these. And I generally talk about how should we go about budgeting, and does that $3,000 seem to work? Is a little bit different in the first year because you're both wanting to do the MIG and as well as probably the conference in San Diego, or maybe not, but that's on the table. So maybe we can take that one first and then come back to the question about some of the conflicts about our board advances, if that makes sense. And I should also say we can always continue this at our next advance, which is in a week anyway. So if there's anything that we want to just kind of get the issues on the table or see how far we get, but maybe just give this 5 or 10 minutes and then we can bring the rest to the advance itself.
So, Lori?
So you mentioned that you're estimating about 21 for CSBA, which is kind of our only opportunity for professional development together, with the exception of MIG. How much is Masters of Governance per?
I think it's $299 for the course itself. For each course itself, it's $299. But of course, we don't pay. We generally are not paid for lodging and other things, so it's a little
we're trying to do it locally.
Right.
So, okay. And then what else typically, like when we're going to events here locally, if there's a ticket price for that, for us to go and honor our students or something like that, and the district is covering that.
No, but I think that's where that other approximate 1,000 per person for the 2,000.
So you think all of that fits into that?
Yes.
Other
1,000 per, essentially, yes.
So MIG is really the additional cost.
Yeah, and the reality is, because we have other budget areas, I have a separate one. A lot of times I just use the superintendent's fund. And again, it's been a little bit, I would say, loose in terms of the budgeting, or it's been there forever, and we just keep repeating that, saying, oh, we probably need blank. And so that's why I'm trying to just get your sense of it and the kinds of things you want to go to. And the reality is, it's important for the community to understand that professional development is really, really important. You don't get paid for what you're doing. And so it's really one of the only things we can do to support your being board members. So it's an important thing for you to do the job that you do.
Any other comments, Jerry?
Just a question and a comment. So traditionally, past boards, has it been about 3K? Is that why you're using 3K as sort of a rough number, just looking back historically?
Yes, but I'm betting that started, 10 years ago, and it's just kind of rolled over every year, and we haven't, I don't believe from anybody I've talked to that that's actually been a conversation. And so I thought I would raise it once, just to say, is this something, we can certainly live with it, but it is driving me to what we're able to do, as opposed to what is it you think is important to do that drives how much we budget for.
Sure. So I'll just, some of my thoughts, I guess I tend to think of it as 12,000 over 4 years, because things like this master in governance, we would do once, I'm only going to do once, and I don't need to do this every year, right? So there may be some front-loaded costs for this first year. In terms of, I think one of the questions is for these professional development events, do we want to go as a group? Or because there's value in doing as a group, but there's also, I suppose, value in sort of seeking out what maybe other opportunities. Maybe I want to go to Sacramento and not do something else. I think the CSBA conference is it's useful. There's a lot of case studies, right? But at the same time, I also think, because they have one up north and one down south, and I'm imagining the amount of knowledge and the networking you get in both are the same. It's just that one of them is a little more expensive to get to because of the travel and lodging. I think for me, I would be happy with sort of a rough budget of, loose quote budget of some amount, 3K or whatever, and then we basically, I guess I don't want to come off antisocial. I love to hang out with you guys, and we should all do lunch and all that. But I also feel like, to me, there's a cost in traveling a couple of 100 miles away to do something that, would have been a lot cheaper if it were here. And I think given I think the financial state of the district, I'd be comfortable with not doing that, at least speaking for myself. And perhaps either, saving that money or spending it on something else, some of the other resources that CSBA offers. So
there's something with this year's CSBA about the next 2 years are down south? Isn't one in San Diego and then one's in Anaheim before they come back up here?
I guess I did. Eric, do you know about that? Yeah, but I vaguely remember something like that because of construction and other things you said going on.
So I just want to make sure that's part of the conversation.
But each year we get to budget, so we can deal with out years at another time as well. So yeah.
I think my comments, if specific year if you take it may be high. For example, all of us most of us are new. So MIT definitely, and I prefer to do it in the first year because this is going to be really helpful for us through the next 3 years, right, if you would. So definitely the first year, then that will be an additional cost. But if you take it over a 4-year period, it is relatively very low, like it's $400 per year, right, if you add it up. So my suggestion is rather than looking into, I know how that's not the way we budgeted, but looking into a budget for 4 years, right? So that will help because one specific year you may spend more, next year you may not. Like for example, if it is in San Francisco instead of going to San Diego, you hardly spent. So that year you may not, and next year none of us probably will be going for an MIT, for example, right? So overall, for a 4-year period, this is a total, and if you divide it per year, right? It may be much more within the limit. Right? Now when you see the first year, if you take it and the multiple things are coming together, that may cost 3,000. Next year you may not spend 1,500 probably. So I think we should look into that. Otherwise it will be very hard, only few people can attend and will become more again another overhead, the rotation of you went last year, you did not go this year kind of. think, I don't know how much it is going to be productive.
Sylvia, do you have a comment? I will while you're thinking.
I think, I like the CSBA conference. I think it has a lot of value. And I think that it's, aside from MIG, it's really the only professional development we do together. I think the sessions are worthwhile. I also think there's a lot of value in, we have opportunities locally to network with our county, other boards in our county to find out what's going on in their schools and districts and how they do things. But we don't have opportunities statewide, and I think that's something that CSBA does for us. So I'm really interested, Satish, in your suggestion about looking at a 4-year rather than looking at a 1 year, because this is an anomaly that all 5 of us are going to make this year, and it won't happen again. So anyway, I guess my bias would be that we would do CSBA, or at least, I don't know, I think there's value in all of us going, but if you don't think there's value, then it doesn't make sense for you to go. So, yeah, so I'm kind of a little bit on the fence with that. Sylvia.
I think I lean towards Jerry's thinking in terms of if it's if it is every other year, north and south, then with with the district's current financial, I don't know that I feel that comfortable, traveling down there when we could just do it locally. But if it's true that it's not going to be up here for a couple of years, then I think that would change, I think, how I would feel about it.
And this might be enough, I mean, I want to hear more, but I'm thinking what I'm hearing here is think on a 4-year horizon, give some flexibility for people who feel like we don't necessarily every year want to do a traveling-based thing together. There is some value in everybody coming together and getting to do something together. You are doing more good portions of it this year as well. So I bet that staff might be able to come back to you with some ideas. I'm hearing, like, maybe think over a 4-year period what makes sense to do. That allows us to look into, is Anaheim really happening or not, and then we'll give that consideration. And in the meantime, we'll make sure there's enough budget in the coming year to handle anything that we know people would want to do. So, okay.
And if we can find out what Lori was talking about, what the next couple of meetings for CSBA, if it's going to be, yeah, that would change my ranking also. So,
Lori, you have to
Yeah, so I was asking about what the outstanding costs were compared to prior year's budgets, but then you also mentioned, that maybe that budget was just kind of set in stone 10 years ago and we haven't really adjusted for costs since. And so, obviously we know costs have gone up in many ways around here. But I'm wondering, I guess, if you're looking for addition to the discussion, I like the idea of something more flexible. I agree with Phyllis in that I found a lot of value in it. I feel like these are my years right now to really hone in on what good governance is, and I find that exceedingly valuable, and I want the opportunity to continue that. But I also know that every part of the value of a diverse board is not everybody's going to feel the same way about the same things, and so if part of the flexibility built into it is allowing that it may not be the same for every single one of us every single year, I'm okay with that. I don't know if everybody else is, but I am. And then the other thing that I would say to that is, I guess it might, since this is discussion, right? So I can ask you a question, right? So thinking out, if you hadn't had 4 new trustees coming in, where everybody else on your board was new, would you have repeated Meg?
No.
So you're
Because I've already done it
right.
twice. This is
It's
my
because
third
this is
time.
such a unique
But I
situation.
thought it was important that the 5 of us do it
Because
together.
this is so unique. So in terms of a budgeting situation,
Right.
this is because this is so unique,
Yeah.
not because you felt compelled
Right,
to go.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
and thank you for doing it, because
Yes.
Phyllis, I just want to, for folks to know, she was there to answer a lot of questions
Yes.
for us.
Yes.
So very grateful you were there.
Yeah, frames a lot of those things for us. So, yeah, super valuable. Okay, thank you. That's my input.
I just want to echo, I like that the notion of that flexibility, maybe having some commonality in terms of a target cap or budget, air quotes budget or whatever, some kind of, but then having that flexibility, and we can discuss whether or not some things maybe we all do together, something that we don't. building that in was something I would support, although we just talked
And there
about.
are boards, for example, CSBA, which is the expensive one. There are boards where only 2 or 3 people go, and not everybody goes, and then they share out when they get back. And so there are a lot of ways to do that. But some boards, like Fremont High School District, they go everywhere together. But not every board does, so, yeah.
I had another item that's related to what was, so I think one of the board policy talked about we're a member of CSBA and SCC, SBA, the county one. I think in previous years, we had also been a member of the API, the Asian Pacific Islander School Board Member Association. I think Anjali at some point was the president, and Kristen, I think, served as treasurer. I just wanted to see if the board would be interested in, and we haven't renewed this year. I don't know if this is a board item or this is a staff
We've
level item.
always renewed, but it's never been in our board policy.
Right, it's not the board policy. I'm not asking for being the board policy.
Yeah.
I was just asking, can we renew, and is that something we talk about, or?
It usually just happens
Just
automatically
do it.
when somebody pays. the-
Right.
I
Yeah.
think that's who this district is, and that's important, so, yes.
Good.
I think most of these things are very important, looks like, right? So I think we definitely, we've got some years it'll be very low, but some years it'll be high. I think I'm for it, it's okay. And it is adding a lot of value. And definitely now we are, as Larry said, there's a lot of learning time first year. And this is going to help us out in the remaining, years.
It's a small price for us to pay to not mess up.
So do we want to revisit this at the advance?
So what's the expectation out of this?
Yeah.
Well, it might be hard for us to prep everything actually for the advances I think about, because some of these I have to do some research. So by the end of the year, when we pass the budget, we'll have some more information about what the plan might be. That works for everybody.
Y'all good with that?
I certainly, I hear everybody, and I think I know where we are.
Sylvia, did you have any more to add? I kind of blew you off. No, you're okay? All right. Okay, good.
So we'll do,
Then there's
what
more
about
to
the
this.
Saturday, and the question about moving a couple of the requests were made, thinking about a couple Saturdays where we might do advances. And in specific, we do have that December 4 meeting, which is when CSBA is, so that we would have to, that might be an opportunity to find another day to perhaps do a different meeting. So, did you want to?
I can probably only, I raised this thing, and since others have enough time, I was just pulling Jerry. so I thought that would be good, one is definitely, neither we are taking off from work and coming here, but this 4 times in a year, probably, I thought that 2 times you can take, it can be in a weekday, and 2 times it could be a weekend, which would help. But I don't know about staff and others, that's mainly, one is the comfort feeling of you all, plus the availability of staff. Okay, so especially it's a whole day effort. So I'm for it, but if majority of you want, no, it should be on a Thursday of every quarter, that's okay, I'll plan it accordingly. But I thought probably, again, like traditionally we have been doing that, so we are continuing it. Probably it's a time for us to really look into.
I have a question. In terms of cost to the district, is there a difference between having it on Friday versus a Saturday? No? Okay.
Nothing
Not
significant.
really, no.
So how are you all feeling about it?
So basically, the suggestion was to have two board advances on a Saturday and 2 on working days. Currently, all 4 are on working days.
I think I certainly can understand where I too also working, so on the days here on weekdays, that's a vacation day. Fortunately, I've been at my employer for about 23 years. I get 7 weeks a year. I actually don't use it all. So I'm actually really flexible. If it works for all, I'm happy to shift you over to a Saturday. Wife won't like it as much, but that's okay. But yeah, I guess I'm okay either way. So take me out.
So I guess I would say, much the same, organizing around family. Whether or not we shifted to, a different time on a weekday, more of an evening, I think there's an impact there on staff, an impact on family there versus shifting to a Saturday. There's an impact on staff there, there's an impact on family there. I'm pretty agnostic, I think, amongst any shift that we do to help relieve some of the workday issue, and I'm happy to be, as flexible as needed. I would say my only kind of personal stake in the ground, we schedule our, because reservations are hard to get, we're a winter sports family, so we schedule our winters in August for the following, like February. So if it's going to be Saturday winter weekends, that does impact me, and so it would be really hard for me to shift to a Saturday once we pass that fall time if I've already made my winter reservations, just because then there's a personal cost.
So if we make the decision to do CSBA, or some of us do, what if we put one in next year on a Saturday, and that would be the December one, which would have to be moved if anybody's going to go to CSBA?
But that's right during the hard time for...
If I know before August, then I won't make a reservation.
Oh, for next year.
For this, I'm talking about for next year.
Oh, right, that's right.
December, we have to move it
December, yeah.
all the way.
Oh.
So it might be a chance to try it for just one learning day. I don't know, Satish, how that would work for you.
It's better than two.
You're not gonna like me though, because that second Saturday, which I'm sure is when you're gonna want to shift to, is when I have
Not necessarily.
I'm
No,
hosting,
no,
so I'm
no.
hosting.
No, we'll find a date. We'll
Okay.
send out a survey, we'll say, is this big? So we'll have that, don't worry about that part of it.
Next question, Satish, for you, is Thursday harder than Friday, let's say?
Oh, no, so if all of you want, I'll take off, that's okay. We all get paid time off, right? So we take from work, but it's okay, I can work on, if you, and, so for example, next Thursday I'm off anyway. No, I just thought that, obviously we can discuss, there's an option, we can discuss if options do not work, no hard feelings, so we can go with that. But I think I
Let me throw out one
agree.
other idea. Let me throw out an idea though. What if we did try, and I wonder if it helps at all, even if we had some that went from 3:30 to 6:30 at night, right? So we can start earlier in the day, you still work most of the day, maybe go earlier as a way to kind of mitigate it in some ways. If it's hard to do actual Saturdays. Yes, I personally am going to feed you. Yeah.
Thank you, Renee.
That's what we do for advances anyway.
So let's, I think, as you said, December anyhow we are to move it. It doesn't matter like whether two people attend CSB or not, or 5 then I think December we have to change it. It's like,
We have to change it anyway.
yeah, anyway we have to change it, yeah. So December alone, let's try it out on a Saturday or whatever, the holiday. But Saturday you have a problem on December.
No, only if I know by August, then I will make sure I don't
Okay.
have a problem.
Yeah, let's suggest a date or December, let's suggest a date. We'll work and see. And as you said, the one other thing we can try like late afternoon or something like that, and we can go to work.
I like that time shifting idea,
Yeah.
so maybe that's something to.
Because instead of coming morning, then at least half day you are there and we can come with much more flexible.
So for the current calendar that we have, why don't we shift to try a Saturday to replace the one, we'll find a date that works for everybody. Let's also try at least one of the advances at a 3:30-ish start time and go see how that goes. Then we can analyze it and decide how we want to.
You're saying 1.5 days, that's good.
My observation of board advances over time has been that's really valuable time. It's also a large chunk of time. Do we need to do exchange 2 afternoons for one full day one?
My recommendation is not to overcomplicate it, but just stick with what we have and make 2 changes. Then we're going to make a new set anyway for a whole new year's calendar, and we can make a decision then on what you're asking.
Okay. I just want to make sure we block enough time ahead on those.
We will.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll bring back some other ideas for a calendar of the advances for you all to reflect on, and we'll send a survey about what are decent days and things like that. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Did that cover
Anything
all of
else?
them?
Did we cover that one?
Schedules and costs for advances, professional development, and other activities, I think so.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to 6.2, LCAP update. Is that you, Allison?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
of the year. And I wanted to be able to bring you little bits of information before we get to the big LCAP this spring. So at today's meeting, I'm going to share with you some of the shifts that are happening as we prepare for making that alignment with our emerging strategic plan. And then really focus in on the stakeholder feedback, because that's a section of the LCAP, and of course, we embrace that part of the LCAP too. Hearing from our stakeholders and then addressing the feedback that we're hearing across the different stakeholder groups. So that'll be our focus today. And I also want to let you know that at the advance, we are planning to bring you more on the strategic plan, and then also I'll bring to you a list of the LCAP actions and metrics. So we'll just have that in kind of a simple form before we're diving into that really complex document and finalizing the draft. So we're going in small steps here in hopes that we can take each bite and consider and reflect together along the way in preparation for coming to you with a refined draft by the time we get to June, and we're seeking your approval. So it's been really fun to work on LCAP this year because of all the strategic planning conversations that are happening. And I feel like we're seeing these seeds of our strategic plan, and there's all this overlap happening between how we're planning our immediate actions and finishing out our 3-year LCAP plan, but also looking forward at the future. So we really keep hearing these same conversations popping up across all of these conversations, LCAP and CIPSA. A lot of it was reflected also in what Marie was saying today about NGSS. There's just so much overlap of really wanting that high quality, challenging learning. This has been a cornerstone of the district, and we also know that we want to stretch in new ways. Hearing lots of ideas about helping kids feel that sense of agency and have a voice in the world for making a change and making a difference. We know that we want learning to be very meaningful. This has been a theme also of really knowing each child and helping learning feel personal for each child, their own strengths and needs and next steps as learners. And then just lots of conversation around bringing joy and engagement to the learning process and being really intentional about how we're focusing on the development of the whole child. So again, something that's been a cornerstone of the district, but we really see the need to be continually intentional about those areas. So academic, social, emotional, and their physical development. They grow in all kinds of ways by leaps and bounds in these years across all different areas of development. And knowing that we want to help our kids really love learning and foster that sense of curiosity. So as we're going into LCAP, we are finishing out that 3-year plan and stretching towards the future. So we're in that in-between stage, but it feels like certain parts of it we're kind of ready to be stretching forward. And one of those areas is we have an opportunity to modify the goal a little bit each year and modify the action. So we're starting to try to shape the language to reflect where we think we may be going with the strategic plan. So that's what you see in the next few slides. Also, I wanted to point out, in case anybody didn't notice this in the current LCAP, last year there was a change made to consolidate goals 1, 2, and 3 into one. So that's why it kind of is clumped together. 1, 2, and 3 is really one, and then we skip to 4, 5, and 6. So you can see the modified goal there of really trying to reflect those seed ideas that are coming up in the strategic planning conversations. And then goal 4 is about learning environments. So just slight modification to reflect the emphasis on positive school climates, all of that work that we've been sharing with you throughout the year in the area of MTSS. Goal 5 is an HR goal, but really we're all a part of it, and thinking about how we can make that shift. The last big shift for schools was about Common Core, the new set of learning standards, and now that's in place, so we're stretching towards our strategic plan and really wanting to make sure that we're thinking about how we're supporting our staff to really help us reach those goals for our kids and for themselves to feel that joy of learning as professionals and have opportunities to collaborate and take risks and be leaders and have that flexibility and autonomy that helps them be the best they can be for our kids. And goal 6 is about community engagement, and that is such a strength of this district. We just had our last PAC-DLAC meeting, and it's just been so inspiring, just all the different ways that we've been working with parents this year and hearing from them, and just that idea that we're really, as a community, leveraging the strength that we have for where we're going with our kids in terms of those strategic directions and bringing the strategic plan to life, not only in our schools, but across our community, hopefully, through all of these networks that are already existing and trying to make new connections along the way. So overall, across all the different stakeholder groups, we heard a lot about flexibility and the importance of knowing that one size does not fit all, and that's for all learners, not just our kids, but really all of us, that everybody benefits from an opportunity for voice and choice and making those choices and also working together towards those common district pieces that are part of our goals and initiatives. And the importance of connections, not just for our kids, but for staff and parents too, to feel part of a community and a collaborative network. And health and wellness, this has been really one of the top concerns, that we know we value academic excellence, but we equally value health and wellness and the well-being for our kids and our staff. And the importance of making learning fun. We have so many things to do every day, in schools, that we don't want to lose sight of the importance of how foundational these years are for our kids, and making it fun and inspiring that love of learning and really spreading joy and really taking time to celebrate like we did tonight. This kind of moment of celebration is so important to build that in intentionally in our culture, and we were hearing that as we were collecting our stakeholder feedback. So I won't read all of these things, but just, in hearing from our kids, really across all the groups, we heard this, the importance of caring school communities. And our kids really have a lot of insightful things to say about how they want to see more connections between what they're learning and their community in the larger world. They feel that change agent in themselves already, and they are eager to take action. And so you will see that reflected in our LCAP, as well as we bring the draft strategic plan to you at the advance. So, really looking at the way we're measuring, continuing the work that we're doing as a group of MTSS is really continuing to live out what we're hearing from our kids as well. And in staff, definitely having choice, being able to connect and learn together, and having time has been a big piece. Making sure that we're allowing time for our teachers to really work together and reflect on how the kids are doing and what the next steps are. Making our data meaningful. We collect a lot of data, and we have work to do in that area of making it useful, being able to reflect back to teachers and school sites so that they can use it as part of their improvement cycles in meaningful ways. And echoing that need to continue to focus on social emotional learning. We've been talking about learning days. We will have more on the calendar next year, and we know that we need to balance between the teachers having choice and also moving forward on these many things that we are doing together as a district, different curricular adoptions or the shift to NGSS, these types of things. So as we're thinking about those days, we're thinking about that balance. Where can we provide choice, and where do we need to make sure we're really offering that high quality professional development for all? Everything can't be a choice, but we know that choice is important. Our special ed teams are really stretched. We see that we have a lot of strength at the site level and lots of needs. So helping our special ed site teams connect across the district and learn together will be a priority. We also have an idea to pilot what we're calling high impact days. So this is a way of scheduling and providing some release time to make sure that teams at the site level have a chance to work together, and they're not kind of running around trying to make it fit in the schedule as it can, but that they know they have a dedicated team time to come together and prepare for meetings, look at case studies, have consult time, that kind of thing. There's lots of things on here, but really it's about continuing the priorities and also aligning and setting aside on our calendars and in our routines time when we're really going to work in networks and making the data and the time line up in meaningful ways. We are talking with our colleagues from Challenge Success at Stanford, and you'll see the contract, and I can provide more background on this, but this is a PD option for teachers in the fall, and also there will be a parent ed opportunity as well. This is about getting to that well-balanced student, academic and social emotional success together. So more on that to come. Our staff also has been asking for more focus on reading intervention and diagnostic tools, and we have already convened a small team to take a look at that, and we will be pulling together team members from across high-need sites to have a district approach to that. It's been site-based so far, and we know that there are many strong practices happening, but we really want to bring together across school sites where we have higher needs. We want to think about that as kind of one improvement network. Who are our kids who need more support, especially in primary reading? What are we doing about it? What's working? How do we know? Those kinds of conversations. Units of study and reading, you know from Lynn's prior presentation that schools have a choice to the degree that they're implementing, so we're calling that flexible paths. This is one way of making sure that we're not overloading teachers as we're going through all these new adoptions, is having that conversation happen at the school level. We provide choices, sometimes they come up with other choices, and we're trying to be responsive to those needs. Things like, yes, we want to fully go for it this year, or what about if we just did these few grade levels to begin, those kinds of things. And you know that we're working on ELD, and we'll bring a new master plan. Parents also echoed, in addition to what's up here, echoed that need to focus on social emotional learning. That's been a big topic across all the parent groups, as well as making sure that we're partnering with the high school so that that articulation is in place. Our parents really want to partner with us. I know you know this. They are just so eager to be a part of this work as we go forward into strategic planning and have opportunities to learn together, to be a part of the work, to have parent ed, and to be able to connect with each other. Our DLAC group, which is our parent group of parents of English learners, had a lot of really great suggestions about how we could connect parents with each other at the registration process and beyond to really understand how ELD works and how they can support their child's progress going forward. And then, of course, just the continuing to focus, as we have been, on having lots of ways for parents to weigh in on the many things that we're doing. So in addition to that stakeholder piece, which will be a section of the LCAP, we'll call out, this is what we've heard, and this is where in the LCAP you can find our responsiveness. We're also, as we're preparing to transition, thinking about that broader scope, because we're aiming towards that strategic plan now. And that connection with SIPSAs, of course, that we've talked about already. We're adding some measures, and you'll see this next time. This is an area where I think we'll continue to grow. What is our dashboard as we're going into that next phase of things? What are we looking at for our measures? So we made a little bit of some tweaks, and I think that will be a continued area for some great discussion. And then I just wanted to acknowledge that I really appreciate Jeff and his team for helping with the budget planning, because that's been just super helpful in thinking about how can we be as efficient as possible, and what will our plan be for monitoring on a monthly basis how spending is going, and making sure that we're really using funds efficiently and in meaningful ways that are really helping us get that return that we're hoping for. So we will be bringing that list, the short form LCAP as a draft, a list of actions and metrics for your consideration at board advance. Then the draft LCAP will come your way soon after that. and then we'll be into the public hearing and approval mode. So we're in that time of gathering feedback and refining things. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Allison, as always. Nice presentation. Do we have any questions for Allison? Lori?
All right. So first, I just want to affirm, like, this is great. I think you're hitting on so many of the highlights of what I hear, not only on my site visits, but, you know, from parents, what I've been hearing for several years in DLAC and in PAC and in budget advisory. And so I think, you know, kudos to all of it. I know that's part community engagement, I know that's part instruction, I know that's part budget all coming together. So just a few that I want to mention. Yes to where you guys are going with the PBIS. You know, I'd love to see if there's room in there for, you know, as the programs are now established, at least in year one, I think at all of our middle schools and some of them moving on into further years, if we can start looking if there's ways we can integrate the feeders into that PBIS work. Yes to the CAST teams. I was really excited when you guys brought that forward, and I hope that rolls out at as many sites as are willing to join that effort. Yes to the SPED high impact days. I hear about that. I heard about it today, and I hear about that. Yes to the choice in PD. I've heard many times about that. Yes to the intervention, expanding the new toolkits. And yes to the CHICS survey, the California Healthy Kids survey. And I'm wondering there, I know that, so it's my experience over time as a parent, so both my kids will be in the cohorts, because it's every other year that won't get it, but I know in the other years where, you know, parents have gotten it, that it seems to create a little bit of buzz when that, what do we call it, waiver goes out. And I'm wondering if there's some work to do there around focus group or something to get some feedback as to why some of our sites have more success in getting good data out of it, and other sites there's a lot more reticence to take the check survey, and maybe that we can crack that nut there. So I don't know if there's room in the LCAP to make for you guys to see if there's an option there. So that's my feedback on where we're at so far, but good stuff. Thank you. Julie?
Okay. So first of all, thanks, Allison. I really like the broader scope of the LCAP. I think just looking at this over the last couple of months, I feel like I'm watching a house being built. And I'm actually pretty excited because I think the next time we do this, 5 years out or what, it's going to be different because there's already going to be one of these. But for the first time, I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to imagine what could be. So and thank you for shepherding this. Great job. I had a series of sort of questions on points, but I had a general one. And if you could go back to one of the initial slides on the key themes, one of the first slides you showed, where you had, I think it may have been the very first one. So you have these 3 themes, right? And I was, I know you have a mental model in mind when you put them down in words, and then, and I'm trying to better understand sort of, let's see, how would I ask my question? So that third one, I see that's really about learning environment and foster love of learning. So I get what that theme is. Okay. The first 2, I wanted to, because it seems like one is about you have high quality, challenging learning and then meaningful learning, and yet you put them in 2 different bullets. So I was wondering if you could say a little bit more to help me understand your because there's a set of things we want to do, right? So you went through I think you must have gone through an abstraction, generalization, clustering exercise to get it to these 3. And I just wanted to understand a bit more about the division of the first 2.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
does that make sense, Allison?
Yes, that totally does,
Okay.
because I think that's been a struggle in my mind, because there's a lot of overlap between those first 2. And, we put it out here as little seeds, but, it might change as we're going forward. I think it probably will. So I don't know if these 3 buckets will still be there. We may end up shifting that at the board advance. We'll kind of go back to these big ideas, and it could change. For me, the first one, as I'm thinking about it right now, is about, we know we want that academic rigor, and we want opportunities for that very deep learning. And that is showing up in all kinds of ways right now. It's that NGSS shift, for example, that Marie was talking about. All kids learning in science, we want it to be not just this much doing, but lots of doing. Those kinds of ideas that we've talked about with STEAM, or going deep, having that inquiry approach. And there is overlap in meaningful learning, because part of making learning meaningful is when you have challenging things that are challenging to you, right, and are at that deep and rigorous level. For me, the meaningful learning piece really hits on that personalizing piece that we've been talking about, that we always want really rigorous, meaningful, deep learning, and we also know that that varies for each child. So the way that we make it personal for each child, to me, is the second one, but maybe it's just one big idea. I don't know, we'll have to sort that out.
No, that makes sense to me. So the first one, more about academic rigor, achievement, but then the second one is really providing that support, that nurturing, so that they can individualize the journey. And then the third is in the environment. Because I'm trying to kind of get from these words, what are some of the big ideas, but I think you've helped me understand that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I'll pass from there.
Okay, Satish, question?
Oh, okay, yeah, I'll also add something here. So thanks, Alison. So I think we typically, I know that for kids and staff, like, it's and a lot of stuff happens and it's ongoing, and I can see it, from the starting of the year itself, quite a lot of stuff going on in that. Thank you for that. But I see that I'm really interested in seeing, like, that we are not leaving the big group here, parents and guardians. That's good. But I think what are the specifics, like what we are going to change it from significantly from year over year?
Are we going to change the action significantly?
Yeah, again, parent engagement and guardians and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right, so when we come to the board advance, we'll give you a list of what are the things that are already in the LCAP that will stay in the LCAP because of that 3-year plan. Each year it has these columns, like is it the same action or a changed action? So when we bring you the list, it will say what are the things that are the same and what is new in terms of parent engagement. So we will be making some shifts there. We were talking with PAC and DLAC about that the other day, and what kinds of topics they'd be interested in terms of parent education, for example, or the EL components. There's just a lot of great work that we can do there to communicate with parents around how to support their kids who are learning English, and to know that the outcomes are really exceptional at the end. That's one of the shifts that I know that we want to make, is to really communicate the data about the achievement of our English learners, for example. So we will continue the strong work that has been happening, and we will have some new actions under the parent and community engagement section. We'll make that really clear at the next meeting where we show you all the actions. Is that answering it?
Yeah, that's good enough. Yeah.
Okay.
Sylvia, did you have any question or comment?
Yeah. Thanks, Allison. So I've met with 3 of my schools and met with the principals to look at the SIPSAs, and it's actually really great to see that there's quite a bit of alignment with what I'm seeing in the LCAP slides and what I'm seeing in the site plans. And it's good to kind of see, okay, this is like the larger picture, and this is how it's actually being implemented. As I've been speaking with the different principals, some of the themes that have come up over and over again are the importance of teacher professional development, teachers college specifically,
Yes.
And then the time for teacher collaboration. And I know that it's listed here, but I think one of the concerns that I've been hearing is that even though it's listed, it doesn't end up happening. And so I'm just wondering, and I don't know if this is at the LCAP level or maybe this isn't quite the right place for that, but like...
Well, no, I actually think it is, and it's
Okay.
really, and we talked about it today, I think. What I would say is I'm hoping we'll talk about that deeply at the advance, because we have a whole hour to dive into this.
Okay.
But I think that is, you aren't the only one who's hearing that, and I think we do need to dive into the professional development piece and making it meaningful.
Right, yeah, because I think what concerned me as I was seeing some of the different plans was some of it is, okay, yeah, this is going to be during the Tuesday staff meetings, during the early release days, but then there's other times when the teachers are coming in before school starts to do that collaboration, and, it's on their own time, or, they plan to go to the teacher's college, but then the sub doesn't show up because we have this huge sub shortage, that kind of stuff, right? And so what are we doing at the district level to make sure that those things are in place so that the teachers can, so we don't just say, oh yeah, we value this, but then it's up to you at the site level to make it happen. What else can we do at the district level to provide the structure to make sure that our teachers are getting those things?
Right, yes. We also have principals meeting on Monday, so we'll be talking about some of that then as well. So specifically the units of study, PD plan, how to lay out the calendars, as you were mentioning, when that data piece will happen, trying to get some clarity around those pieces, and yes, addressing some of those challenges. Some of it you'll see in the action, some of it is allocated in LCAP specifically, and some is more site-driven. So we can definitely dive into that at the advance too, and knowing that we're really trying to make that shift, it'll be new. That idea of going back to a more collaborative approach on some of the learning days for sites that are wanting to do that. There'll be some choice there too. Some days we're all together for sure, and some there'll be more of a choice.
Jerry, you had something else?
Yes, I just maybe two quick things. So a comment, you talked a lot about community, and one of the goals, I think number 6, is about fostering community and all that. And I think just wanted to share a thought that, I think for me, the ideal sort of community, the interconnection, would be a fully connected one. Because, so I guess what I'm saying is that I think it's our role to help build and foster communities. We don't necessarily have to be part of that, right? So I guess I'm not, for me, you could have a star-shaped kind of connection where there's a community and the district or the schools are at the hub. But you can also have the kind of community where there may be interactions going on that doesn't necessarily involve the district. And I think the latter allows us to scale better. And you kind of saw some of that, notice with one of the ones about the EL, people wanting to engage with folks with similar cultures and all that. I think that's a reflection of that. So I just wanted to share that one thought. The other one is around equity and school equity, and just equity among schools. And I was wondering, is that, I see mentions of school environments and all that. I didn't see explicit mentions of that here in the LCAP. And is that something that we should, more of a strategic plan kind of thing, or I don't see that as a first class object here, at least in this deck. So it's just an observation, and I don't know if you have any comments or thoughts on that.
We should talk about that. We know we're working on that through
Certainly.
all the ways that we are.
Right,
It's
right.
25 and really trying to understand where we are right now. That's one of the steps that we're working with the schools on. I didn't call it out in right now. It kind of feels like it doesn't fit there, but.
And I'm not saying it needs to be either, it's just an observation that what Dr. Baker, a big part of his presentation about CUSD 25 is about sort of being together, and I think part of that involves equity, and that just, I understand you don't want this to look like kitchen sink, that if it's everything, then it's really nothing, right? And I think you emphasized certain things here, but I wanted to at least note that I noticed it's not explicitly called out here, and so, but I'm not advocating for it necessarily to be that way, just want you to consider that.
You will see variation in the way resources are allocated when we get to the action. So that piece has been a part of LCAP, trying to assess where the highest needs are and allocate additional funding to the business. Yes.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting.
Thanks.
So we'll be ready to talk about that more at the advance, because I think it's an important thing for us to study.
Anything else, Lori?
Can you talk to me more about what you were just saying about that we might serve a purpose in helping to build a community that we're not necessarily the hub in? So how do you understand?
Right. So I think, I think part of, being in the PTA, one of the things that parents always want are names and addresses of other parents to set up play dates. And I don't know what all the privacy policy or all that, but that would be an example of if somehow we could link them all together so they can go set up play dates on their own and doesn't have to go through the school, right? Because I think there are a number of these things that where we have that information, we have the connections, but if everything has to come through us, right, then it becomes a bottleneck. And so I don't know what all the ARs that allow or disallow such things, but that would be an example of that.
Okay,
Does
I
that
see
make
what you're going
sense?
to say. Yeah, and some
Yeah.
sites have a tool that allows that, and maybe
Some
others
sites
don't.
don't,
So,
yeah,
okay,
right.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Anything else? Thank you very much. Next, we have committees. Craig?
So I think you all
Or
know.
Leslie, I don't know who's doing committee.
We're just going to throw it out there.
Okay.
Yeah. So this was just one, it was requested, I believe, that we talk a little bit about. We definitely have the 2x2 with some combination of Cupertino by itself, but also with Sunnyvale as well as to some degree with Los Altos. So the question was, do we expand? That's 3 of our jurisdictions. But do we expand to include others? And for example, I know that Saratoga this week did a whole thing about safe routes to school there, and so at least one of our principals from Saratoga went to that. So that's one way we're connected, but we aren't connected through board members or electeds with one another. So yeah, the question is Santa Clara, Saratoga, San Jose, West San Jose. We generally are not that connected to the jurisdiction. And the question is, do we want to try to do similar kinds of things, or what, you want to expand what we have right now, which is 2x2 in those that includes the first 3, Los Altos, Sunnyvale, and Cupertino. So any thoughts about that?
With the strategic partnerships, so Jerry and I took a little bit of a divide and conquer, and I contacted Santa Clara and Jerry contacted San Jose. So Santa Clara would be open to meeting with their mayor and 2 council members. And, I think from the standpoint of just opening the line of communication, starting a dialogue, seeing what's there, no commitment of whether or not, of necessarily serial meetings, but just let's meet once and talk about what those opportunities are that we have mutual interest on. And it's okay, I guess, if I'm discussing with my colleagues, like I'm fine with every 2x2 looking slightly different. I think they all may serve a different purpose depending on the city. That's part of our unique animal here in CUSD is the 6 cities are so different. And as we saw with Norman and Sherry tonight, some of them have resources that others don't. And but at any rate, I would hope that we would consider taking Santa Clara up on their offer and assigning 2 of us to go in with them. And if you want to give an opinion on
Sure. So I spoke with Vice Mayor Kathy Jones of San Jose, right? And he's open to the idea. He supports it, and so but he's sort of looking for us to drive that. So I think if we wanted to set up some sort of a 2 by something, probably just one, because that's his district. Well, 1 by 1 by 2. Then basically he's supportive of that, getting that conversation going. With that said, I'm happy to help set up the connections. I don't have the bandwidth to serve on more committees. I hate to advocate for a committee and then say I don't have the bandwidth. So I'll just say that the connection's there. He's happy to support this, and if someone would like to serve on that, that would be great. Saratoga, I spoke with Councilmember Yantal, same kind of reaction. She did ask for a more formal request to be sent to the mayor, Mimi, but again, I think there's support for that kind of interaction at the elected level. But again, it's only if there are folks among us who are interested in serving on that. So, and and then I think Satish and I will be meeting with Councilmember John Willie from Cupertino tomorrow to basically plan out a sort of the public meeting of the 2x1, similar to what Lori facilitated for Los Altos and CUSD a week or 2 ago. So, which sort of my report, I guess.
Sort of wondering, as you know, one of my concerns has been that there has been a 2x2 version with Cupertino in particular, but it has not been with the clarity of purpose. And I'm wondering whether in the places where we haven't started anything yet, if it should be less of a committee at first and just people meeting with people to see, is there a there? Because what I don't want to do is create committees just to have a committee, which is how some of these have felt. And then you go to a meeting and you go, well, why did I go? And what, you know, it really eats up time. And so I feel like, you know, like just as an example, if with Santa Clara there is a specific thing we think would be good to work on, so could we investigate that? Could that be something that I, with one board member, could just investigate some more? Let's meet a couple times, and then we could recommend when it gets to a place where, yeah, we ought to have a more formal 2x2 if it's going to be ongoing. That feels to me like it might be a better use of our time, and wait until there is a real there, because you're doing that with Cupertino starting tomorrow, and I think that is the whole purpose, right, is to come up with, well, what are those things we'll really work on, really roll up our sleeves, invest our energy and maybe resources in, what with it. So I just feel like maybe that might be a better route, or a suggestion anyway.
I think especially with Santa Clara and San Jose better, because probably our engagement will be, I guess, it will be limited when you compare to Cupertino and Los Santos probably. Yes, yeah. So when you compare.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me, to have meetings if there's something we need about. I think the sense of in the case of Cupertino, I think we do have, things that we do need to work through. So I think that is worthwhile. I'm not sure of any outstanding issues with Saratoga, San Jose, or Santa Clara at this point.
Yeah, I guess part of where I'm at is I feel like, I'm going to throw this out there and nobody has to agree with me, but I'd like to see us, I think, meet with each city in some capacity at least once a year, just to keep relationships established, and whether or not that's a board member and a council member going and having coffee together, or a more official public meeting. I think, again, that's part of our unique challenge as a district with 6 cities is, you know, right now we've got some things that need to be wrestled with Cupertino or need to be wrestled with Los Altos. If we don't have those things with the other cities, I still think it's important to have a regular check-in on some sort of interval. At least once a year seems reasonable to me and not a huge time commitment. Yeah. And then whatever comes out from that says, do we have any work we think we need to scope for this year or not? You know, kind of thing. But
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. That, to me, that's not a committee, and that is different. We could just say, you know, we want to each year make sure that there is a board member with the superintendent connected to like people in city jurisdiction in each of our jurisdictions. And but that's a little different from these 2x2s, which are ongoing in nature, where you do have to host them as formal meetings. They are beholden to the Brown Act, all of those sorts of, those are different. That's what we're doing with Cupertino and what we will do with the Sunnyvale.
What we did with Los Altos,
yeah,
and haven't passed on the Sunnyvale. Is there an opportunity here, so as I'm looking at our document here, our shared document, is there an opportunity to kind of treat this more like, say, the 25, where, you know, Satish is on point for that partnership with Steve, but, you know, maybe that's not an official notice committee either, where it falls under this, where maybe we change the title to strategic partnerships and or 2x2 committees, or something like that, where we still kind of decide amongst ourselves who's going to cover that in any given year, but it could be a formal committee that's noticed, and it could also be just a...
Right, and the ones we have here are actually officially the formals. That's what these are, because they were signed and agreed to and named as formal ones, the ones that are on this list. So my recommendation would be for those other 3 jurisdictions that are not, that we treat them that way, that they don't have to be part of a, because you don't have to go through a committee process to do that, and we don't have to post meetings. We get together with other jurisdictional folks and have a conversation. So like, for example, you said that you'd be willing to do Santa Clara, and we'll set a time and we'll go meet once, twice a year and figure out, well, what's the there. But at some point it might become a formal 2x2. And if we have people who would be willing to do Saratoga, San Jose, we can just be working on that and keep it a little less formal and see where it goes.
So my only concern there is I want to make sure our community knows that that's happening. Like, I understand what you're saying, it can be informal and that's just part of our work, but I feel like sometimes that leaves a perception that there's an equity issue there for our, in terms of how much time or attention we're focused on any one of those jurisdictions, and I don't want to lose that impression. So I just want to make sure that even if maybe we asterisk the bottom of this and just say, these others are addressed in a different way. I don't know what that looks like. That's for you to solve, but that's my concern. So I just wanted to make sure people know that we're making the effort across our entire, we're all in this together.
Is this something that we can think about a bit? I'm really conscious here that we have guests to talk to us about our ballot stuff, and that I didn't mean for this to be a long thing, and so maybe I could think about this a little more and bring back some ideas, maybe even at the end. Awesome.
Does that work for everybody? Okay. So we're on to discussion action, resolution, acknowledgement of state funding applications beyond bond authority. Is there any information we need about this, or do we just sally forth? Okay, is there a motion?
I move to adopt resolution number 18-19-17.
A second?
I second it.
Satish seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of paid lunch price increase. I watched the video of your meeting last time, which I was not able to attend, and you had quite a robust discussion about this last time, so I'll entertain a motion and then we'll see. Nicole is here if anybody has any additional questions, but we need a motion on the table.
I will move 7.2, approval of the paid lunch price increase.
And a second?
I'll second.
Okay. So is there any discussion, or do we have any questions for Nicole?
Thanks.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you, Nicole.
Good night.
Next, we have the results of the community survey regarding potential parcel tax measure, and we have Jessica and Jake. All right.
Good evening. I just want to also acknowledge EMC and TBWB for their hard work on this. It's been a very, very swift process for the results coming tonight. It's been a thorough process, and so tonight really is, in addition to that February 14th meeting that provided action for us to go out for the feasibility study, we are looking at direction at the end of this presentation for where we take this going forward. So with that said, thank you guys for being patient, waiting through our meeting, and I'll turn it over to you guys.
Okay. Good evening. I do apologize that I've been under the weather, so my voice is affected. If I do start coughing, I'll step away with my water. I apologize. And hopefully I can get through this without coughing. Okay. Again, thank you for having us here. I'm going to present to you an executive summary of the results of the recent voters survey of voters in the district. So I wanted to start off by showing you this timeline slide, this overall timeline slide, which Jake will talk more about later, but it serves here just to remind us all of the phase that we're in right now, which is the one highlighted in red, the feasibility phase. So this survey was done as part of the feasibility phase of the overall process. So a few notes on the methodology of the survey. This was a mixed mode survey incorporating both telephone interviews on landlines and cell phones, as well as online interviews via email invitation. So we did just complete the survey earlier this month. We did 600 interviews, so the overall margin of error is plus or minus 4 percentage points. We did offer interviews in both English and Chinese, and as always, the interviews were conducted by trained professional interviewers. You'll see through the course of the presentation some comparisons to results from surveys we've done on behalf of the district in the past. I will point out that this was the first time that we've done a mixed mode survey on behalf of the district, so it differs a little bit in methodology to the surveys that have been done in the past. In some cases, that can lead to very minor differences in results. Just another quick note on the methodology before I take you through some of the key findings and then some of the more detailed results. We utilized what's called a split sample methodology in order to test two potential parcel tax dollar amounts. So respondents were randomly assigned into one of two samples, sample A or sample B. Those in sample A were presented with a potential measure for a $98 parcel tax, and those in sample B were presented with a $125 potential parcel tax. After they were asked the initial question, we did follow up by asking them the reverse amount, so everybody did hear both amounts, but we're going to focus on the initial unbiased read on the measure at the two different amounts. So I wanted to pull out a few key findings, and then as I mentioned, I'll get into the more detailed data subsequently. What we do see is that voters continue to recognize the high quality of schools in the district. The vast majority say the district is doing a good job overall. We do see some sensitivity to taxes, as we've seen traditionally among voters in this district, but we also see that the overwhelming majority believe it's important to maintain high-quality local schools, even if it means raising taxes, and we see more than 2/3 who agree with that statement. Initial support for our parcel tax measure is near the 2/3 threshold, which is the threshold required for passage. We see that top priorities for a measure would be retaining high-quality teachers and maintaining strong core academic programs in reading, writing, math, engineering, and science. And we also see that assurances that all money would be spent here in the schools and that it will attract and retain teachers. Those are compelling reasons to support the measure. So on this slide, this shows the result on the question, would you say that the elementary and middle schools in the district have a great need for more money, some need, only a little need, or no real need for more money? So as you can see, 26% say there's a great need, 37% see some need, and when you total those, it's 62%. On the flip side, you have 23% who see only a little need or no real need for additional funding for the schools. When you look at that question, which we have asked for quite a few years, so over time looking at the results on that question, you see some slight fluctuations, but also some overall consistency. And since the last time we did a survey in this district, which was in September of 2013, we've seen some growth in intensity, meaning that the percentage who see a great need for additional funding has gone up a little bit. So on this slide, we're showing the results of the ratings questions where we asked, regardless of whether or not you have children in the schools, please rate each of the following areas related to the Cupertino Union School District. And so these were randomly presented through the course of the survey, depending on, they were randomized for each individual respondent, but we're showing them in order of the ratings. So you can see the student academic achievement and test scores, 45% rate that as excellent, 34% as good, for a total of 80% positive ratings, so overwhelmingly positive ratings of student academic achievement and test scores. The job teachers are doing, 77% positive. The quality of elementary school education, 77% positive. The overall job the district is doing, 78% positive. The quality of middle school education, also overwhelmingly positive. So on those items, we really do see voters recognize the high quality of local schools. The last item, the management of district monies. Voters are more divided on that item, and you'll see that's fairly consistent over time. So this is some trend data so that you can compare where you are today. So what we've seen in the past, the overall job the Cupertino Union School District is doing, so 30% excellent, 48% good, and this compares fairly similar to what we've seen in the past with a slight drop in intensity. And this slide shows the trend data on a few of the other items, the quality of elementary school education, the quality of middle school education, and the management of district monies. So here, what stands out to me is that there are some fluctuations, but really the consistency of the fairly outstanding ratings of the elementary and middle schools that is consistent over time. So certainly the value that the schools provide to the community has been consistently recognized. And as I mentioned, when it comes to the rating on the management of district monies, we've traditionally seen that voters are divided on that question. So the respondents were asked a series of questions. Do you agree or disagree with each of the following statements? So you can see those statements here. Maintaining the quality of schools should be a top priority, even if it means raising taxes. You see today, as in the past, 73% agree with that statement, 26% disagree. The consistency over time on that particular question is very, very solid. So really we haven't seen a lot of change in that sentiment, but it's nice to see that there's an overwhelming majority agree that maintaining schools is a top priority. I trust the district to properly manage tax dollars. 63% agree with that today. It's a slight dip since previous research. And taxes in this area are already high enough. I'll vote against any tax increase. We do have 50%, as you saw, who agree with that statement. But if you look at where we've seen the results on that question over time, it is very consistent in this community. So here you see the results when we asked. We presented respondents with a potential parcel tax measure. As I mentioned before, we did use that split samples where half of respondents heard a $98 per parcel annual measure and the other half heard a $125 per parcel measure. And so what you can see here are the results for each of those samples. Interestingly, when we ask it for the $98 version, you see total support at 64%. That's 62% who initially say, I would support this. Another 2% who were undecided, but when prompted, leaning toward voting yes, so the total is 64%, just under the 2/3 threshold. On the other hand, among those who heard a $125 measure, you see 67% initially supported, and another 1% who leaned toward voting yes, and with rounding, when you total those together, you get to 69% total support. So altogether, the whole sample somewhere near 2/3 support. At the $125 parcel tax measure, you do see 69% support. So we asked a series of questions specifically about the components of the measure. So listing some of the things that the measure could pay for. And we said on a scale of 1 to 7, how important is each of these to you? So what you see here are the percentage that rated each of these items as a 7 in the dark blue, the percentage that rated each of these as a 5 or a 6 in the light blue, and then the lower numbers, the 1 through 3 in the lighter red and the red on the right-hand side. Those numbers are quite small. All of these elements are important to the voter community. What rises to the top, particularly in intensity, is retaining highly qualified teachers, maintaining strong academic programs in reading and writing, maintaining strong academic programs in math, engineering, and science, keeping schools safe, clean, and well-maintained, ensuring teachers have adequate training and support, and keeping teachers' salaries competitive with surrounding districts. So you do see some themes around these top priority items. Many of them are around retaining high-quality teachers, and many of them are around maintaining strong academic programs. What's interesting is when we look at some of these questions that have been asked in previous research, so comparing what we're seeing today to what we've seen in the past. On some of these items, you see some consistency. So, for example, only a very slight change when it comes to the importance to the community of retaining highly qualified teachers. That remains a top priority. But if you look at keeping schools safe, clean, and well maintained, you see a slight increase there, so the importance of balance seems to have gone up, but even more dramatically, keeping teacher salaries competitive with surrounding districts. The percentage who rated that as a 7 in September of 2013 was 40%. Today it's 55%. So you do see the urgency around that item seems to be going up. And you can see when it comes to making an exemption available for seniors and people with disabilities, very consistent results over time, and keeping class sizes as small as possible, also very consistent with what we've seen in the past. I will mention when it comes to the senior and persons with disabilities exemption, when you look at that among respondents who are seniors, very important to that particular group, so that's not surprising. So over the course of the survey, we presented a series of statements, some statements that you might hear from supporters of a potential measure, and some statements that you might hear from potential opponents. So on the support side, we presented information explaining, for example, that all of the revenue from the measure would be spent here in local schools, could not be taken by the state, and that the funding would be a dedicated source of local funding for attracting and retaining high-quality teachers and maintaining outstanding core academics. So these were the statements that were presented, and we asked if there were compelling reasons to support the measure. And then on the other side, things that you might hear again from an opponent, like taxes are already too high, I'll vote against this because the cost is too much, and that there are other priorities for the community. So you can see we asked after the support statements and after the opposition statements how they would vote on the measure. So what this slide shows is the over the course of the survey. In the dark blue there, you can see for those who heard the $125 personal tax measure, they started out at 69% total support. After they heard statements from supporters, that didn't change. They remained at 69%. After presented with messages from potential opponents, support did drop to 63%, so that does demonstrate a little bit of vulnerability when presented with negative pieces of information. So it's interesting to look back at this slide. We're showing the historical context, meaning what we've seen in polling on behalf of the district leading up to measures that have been on the ballot. So the lighter colored bars there are from past polling, and the solid colors are from elections. So just for example, we did a poll in April of 2008 on a $125 parcel tax measure, and then a poll in January of 2009 on a $125 parcel tax measure. You see we got 64% support in that poll, and then in the election, 70% voted yes, and it did pass. So looking at the trend over time, you can actually see in past elections in particular, we've seen the community is very supportive of parcel taxes on behalf of the schools. So just a couple notes in conclusion, and then I'd be happy to take any questions before I turn it over to Jake. So again, positive opinions about the district are very widespread. Most voters do appear to be willing to invest in the schools in order to maintain high-quality local schools. It does look like a $125 parcel tax measure is viable for an election in 2019. But we should remember there is some sensitivity around new taxes, and that the measure is vulnerable to opposition messages. And so for that reason, we think it's important for a robust, independently funded communications effort to make sure the community understands that all of the money would be spent here, dedicated for the schools, for the intended purpose, and would contribute to retaining high-quality teachers and maintaining strong academic programs. So that's the end of the polling part of the presentation. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions before turning it over to Jake.
Thank you, Jessica. Does anybody have questions for Jessica, Jerry?
Thank you. Very thorough, very clear. Appreciate the presentation. So you talked about the item around the trust, the district's management of the money that seemed to be a little bit lower than the other items. I'm trying to see if that, so you must do surveys for other jurisdictions and such. Do you think that drop is more for our district, or are you seeing that drop in other places where you're doing a similar polling?
That's a really good question. It really does vary from area to area. It does tend to be related to overall mood in some cases. One of the questions we asked in the survey that didn't actually show you tonight is just about overall optimism and pessimism. And we do see, although the majority of voters in the area do remain optimistic, we have seen optimism has dropped over time since the last survey was conducted. And so oftentimes results on that question are more related to just how people are feeling about how things are going than they are about anything specific to what the district is doing. It's hard to really pinpoint the cause for that drop, but that could be one of the reasons.
But your feeling would be if I forced you to make a choice between whether this is more of a general trend or one that's specific to the school district, what would your gut tell you? Well, based on your experience, and I understand when this is not scientific, but just based on your experience and your intuition.
Sure. I'm guessing it's a combination of factors. Maybe some things that voters have heard about what's going on in schools, maybe not even in the Cupertino Union School District, but local school districts in general, maybe contributing a little bit to the increase in negative sentiment. And maybe that on top of sort of a declining trust in public entities in general that we're seeing, not just here, but elsewhere.
If I could just ask one more, Phyllis, when I'm done. So the two that you tested, the $98 and the $125, so there's a few percentage difference. I do understand that one puts it below 66 and the other above, but do you consider that statistically significant? Are we within error bars here? These are plus or minus 4%.
Right,
So,
the overall margin of error is plus or minus 4, but
Right.
the margin of error for each of those 300 is between 5 and 6. So it is actually hard to say whether there's a statistical difference, but because it remains consistent over the course of the survey, I tend to think, I tend to trust that there might be a slight difference. And now it's counterintuitive, in some ways to think that support would be higher for a higher dollar amount, but it does appear to be somewhat consistent. And those two samples are balanced demographically, so we hold the demographics constant so that we can really ensure that any differences we're seeing are in the data itself. Yeah.
thank you.
Anybody else have questions for Jessica? Okay, thank you. I guess we'll hear from Jake next.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and great to speak with those of you I haven't spoken with in the past yet. So my name is Jake Martin. I work with TVWB Strategies and Joy Tatarka, who I know you've worked with in the past. We've worked with the school district on a few different occasions for these kinds of efforts, and with EMC as well on them. So what we wanted to talk through today specifically is what the planning process looks like between now and the potential placement of a parcel tax measure on a November 2019 ballot. As you can see, we are just finishing up that feasibility study phase, that red box over there. That's the poll, that's the process that goes into creating the poll and analyzing the results and presenting them here. And right now we're at that red light, green light spot. That is now where the decision is upon the board, not necessarily at this meeting, but to move forward with this effort. And there are two steps to that: to build consensus and then to build a strong measure, which I'll go into. And then a third, final step, which is an advocacy campaign, which would be picked up by an independent group from outside the school district and privately funded. I should also mention that at the end of these next two steps, building consensus and building a strong measure, you do have a deadline of August 9th for ballot placement on a November 5th, 2019 ballot. So our first step here is phase 2, phase 1 being the feasibility study. Phase 2 is building consensus, and that's where you take the information that we just received from this polling, and we go and we speak with the community. We want to get the feedback from the community, not just in the scientific manner, but we want to hear the comments that people are leaving. We want to speak with those key stakeholders, whether they're your elected officials within the cities that are present within the school district, or your chambers of commerce, or other key areas where there are these important groups that it's important to engage them. On top of that, you want to engage your voters as a whole. Scientific polling is very important, but it only allows us to speak with a limited number of people within your district. Doing larger scale engagement, like sending out direct mail, utilizing your social media and online presences, is incredibly vital for speaking to not only all voters, but your parents, your staff, your teachers, even getting engagement from your students. As part of that process, should you decide to move forward with TWB for that build consensus phase, as you have in the past, we would help develop messaging materials, including fact sheets, talking points for when you and members of your administration go out and speak with the community to help guide those conversations, as well as answer questions that the community might have. All of that being based on not only the scientific survey, but background of the district, your funding needs, and the plan that you are interested in pursuing moving forward. So the phase after that, after you engage the community, after you've done the work to have those conversations, you have to decide if you want to move forward with this measure, and you have to build a strong measure. One that is palatable to the community, that fits with your polling, and that's going to meet the needs for funding that your district has. So there are a few steps in that. It requires working with your entire consultant team as well as your legal counsel to create a resolution, create a 75-word ballot question. That was the question that Jessica showed, where it asked the tax rate, showed the amount raised per year, and showed the programs and projects that would be accomplished by a partial tax measure. It's putting all of these together in a way that maximizes your chance for success when you go to the ballot. Those 75 words, it may seem like a thick paragraph, but there's not a lot in there. There's not a lot of chance to take what's going to be on the ballot and use it to put your best foot forward as a district to voters. Because as much as you can do your outreach and speak with many of the voters in the community, a lot of the voters who engage with this measure, the first time they do so is going to be on the ballot. And putting your best foot forward in that sense, having a strong resolution, a strong ballot question, knowing the right answers when it comes to your rate, your total amount raised, as well as the exemptions you provide, and your sunset or lack thereof, and providing the direction on how to use those funds is going to be important to those who are deciding whether or not they want to trust you with them. This will all come to a head during a board vote. As I said, the board has until August 9th to place the measure on the ballot. Typically, what we like to do is schedule 2 meetings prior to that for a first reading of the resolution to give the board a chance to see the resolution as it has been assembled by your legal and consultant teams, review it, provide your feedback, and then a second meeting where you vote to place it on the ballot or amend as needed. Finally, the following step, as I mentioned, is an independent advocacy campaign. I want to make very, very clear this is for informational purposes only. None of the steps on the slide would be conducted by the district itself. This would be an independent group, often of parents or invested community members, who would be able to fundraise to run a campaign to support this measure. It would include typically direct mail, which is the most cost-efficient way of reaching as many voters as possible, a volunteer base, to go knock on doors and make phone calls, as well as strategizing through social and digital means. I don't want to answer too many questions or go into too much depth about the campaign because this is a public meeting and I don't want to imply any way support for a campaign, but it is an important step, as Jessica said, for finishing out this process. That's the extent of those slides. Are there any questions I can answer?
Questions? Okay, so this is a discussion action item, right?
I'm not sure. I don't know that there would be, it's more direction, isn't it? Because I don't think we would do anything with action.
No, at this time, what had been discussed prior was at your next meeting, approving a phase 2 contract for TBWB to do that outreach process. This is more providing the board with information about what has been done today as part of that feasibility study that is at the very beginning of the process.
Yeah, what I would point out, because of the summer, our timeline is really, really quick. So the degree to which we have a sense of direction from you tonight, at least start the movement toward being able to meet timelines, et cetera, because we think we would go out, or just need a lot more conversation, not ready to say, but in some kind of general direction would be important for us, because it will be very hard for us to hit all the timelines if we don't start thinking quickly about it.
So what are we thinking about moving forward with this?
I have a question. So at this rate of 125, I guess it's more for Dr. Baker. How much money, do we have a sense of how much money that is a year?
I think it was about 3.75 million, more or less.
It would be just about under $4 million.
Yeah.
The sample language says $4,321,500 for 5 years.
There's senior exemptions that when you take into account what our current senior exemptions are, we have about 34,560 parcels, and then we have exemptions within that.
And so we're basing it on past about what percent gets the waivers that we're.
So I'll just blab first. So I certainly am in favor of, I think, increasing the revenue and moving forward with this. I guess my question is, I know you've been doing planning and thinking through this USD 25 and all that. Is 125 an adequate amount for, I know there's the supply side of whether or not you can go higher or lower and all that, but just coming back to the basics, so if you have $4 million more a year to work with, I think the community will want to ask, what do we get or what do we not lose? Do you have a sense of, are you able to talk about that right now, or?
I would say that we have at least a $15 million ongoing problem to do when you think of the strategic plan. What are we saying we're going to provide our children, and et cetera. I see more as a bare minimum amount we need over the next few years is about $15 million. So to get a third of the way there, a little less than a third of the way there, would be extremely helpful. But it's still going to be, yes, we have to do that, and yes, we have to have Cooper Doodle programs be successful for fee for service for another $5 million. We need another $5 million probably through some kind of other direct ask campaign. So in and of itself, it won't solve anything, but yes, we very, very much need a $4 million uptick. There's no doubt about it.
And in terms of the community expecting to know basically where their dollars are going to go, I think we pick up from here and from the conversations that you was talking about and carve a ballot statement around how we think the community wants us to spend the money. So I'm in favor of moving forward. Is there some consensus here? What are the rest of you thinking?
Come on in.
Okay, we've got 3 of us.
Absolutely.
You okay? How about you, Sylvia?
Yeah, definitely. But I think I don't know if this is a question for. So my understanding of parcels is that it's more facilities, right?
No, that's bonds.
Bonds. Oh, okay. Then I'm okay.
Parcel we can spend
Okay,
on
yes.
anything we want
Sorry.
as long as we do what we
Absolutely.
tell the voters. Yeah.
Okay, I just got them mixed up in my head for.
I have a question also, just a clarification. So I'm surprised to see that 98 was actually, less favorable.
It's a big surprise.
Yeah, when you say 125, and the other side, the money, or the handling of money, the response was not that great. So a little bit of contradictory there, right? Any comments on that?
Yeah, this is something that we weren't expecting to see either. And again, it's hard to say, given the margin of error, if there really is a statistical difference. I think what's important to remember and what's important to take away here is that it does look viable at $125. We probably see support today right around that 2/3 mark, whether we're talking about $98 or $125. So certainly when we take into account that voters are somewhat resistant to taxes and that there is some vulnerability when we talk about things like costs, I wouldn't say that, oh, maybe they'd be even more supportive if we went higher. So the results certainly don't indicate that to me. What they indicate to me, especially considering that there's not a dramatic difference between $98 and $125, is that we have voter support at around 2/3 level for the $125 option. So,
What I want to add to it is that my reading of all these data is that in either one of these, our margin is not great enough that we will not have to do a lot of education, a lot of getting out there, and that's going to be true with each of them. And because of that, these data would say to me, there's no reason that they would go for 98 but not 125, right? So there's no reason not to do the 125 because we will put that same amount of energy into the education for people to understand where we are. And I say that partially to say, when you say, yeah, we're in it, I just want you to understand, we're talking about heavy, heavy, heavy lifting between now and, in our community, between now and November.
Would there be a survey before that, or no, this will be the final one?
this is the final part of this feasibility phase.
Okay.
So.
Because since you're in the border, what is the risk of it? Right? So we are the border of 2/3, right?
So it means we got to work really hard to pass it. So
I do, when somebody asks me, so what do you think, is it going to be doable? My view is, yeah, it's doable, but it's doable because we're going to get out there and mobilize, and I'm trusting our community because the district cannot do that mobilization once we reach a certain point, and so thankfully we have this new emerging parent leadership group coalition that is going to embrace the idea of how are we going to bring more money into the district. And I have to put my money there because the other option isn't so good for us.
If I can add one comment, pleasure of the board. My colleague Joy Tadarka and I examined this number, and as Jessica said, we were somewhat surprised. Typically, we don't see the higher number of poll better. We looked over your last series of parcel taxes, and we think a factor, at least one of them, is that voters within your community are used to voting for $125 parcel taxes. They've done it a few times before. They are familiar associating that number with the school district. And so we think perhaps that doesn't explain all of the rise between the two, but we think it contributes. And to speak to what you were saying about the education process, I mean, we work on parcel taxes not only in your community, but up and down the state. And we see plenty where they sit right on this edge where you are right now. And the measures that are successful and the measures that are not are usually very clearly separated by the districts who go out and do that strong education effort. There are plenty of districts who see, oh yeah, we've got 69%, you only need 67. Why go out and speak to the community more than we already have? And that's the area where we see people either sit on that edge or fall below. It's where that effort is put in, not just by the administration, not just by the board, but by the community to get out and educate in both an informational and later an advocacy format that we see the greatest degree of success.
Okay, so it looks like the direction is Sally Ford.
Okay, Sally Ford.
There you go.
Excellent. Anything else we need?
Pardon?
We need a motion?
We don't. No, this is just direction.
Direction to us to start preparing everything we need to be able to bring things back to you at the times that you will need to take action.
So will the next action would be around
A contract, actually.
Okay.
To move forward, and then the next big one actually comes when you put the actual measure forth and you vote for that.
So would you?
Which has to be before August 9th.
Yeah, but would you imagine we would do that in June? Or would we wait till August?
That's what we're going to go prepare. I think what we said is that we would try to get everything set up for it, but the truth is, that's not a good. The parents not being around, that's not going to be our best campaigning time, right? So that's the work we're going to do, is to figure that out.
So what do you think, Jay?
So in addition to that, I mean, typically what we recommend is you vote generally as close to that date as possible, that August 9th deadline, because after you vote to place a measure on the ballot, it severely limits the kind of communication you can do. You can't, right now, you can't advocate for a measure that doesn't exist. So you have a lot of leeway when it comes to going out to the community and speaking about your needs. As soon as a measure exists, as soon as something's been placed on the ballot, your legal counsel is going to give you a lot of limitations on how you can speak about that because a potential opponent could consider it advocacy. Even if it's not, you could get a legal challenge when you don't necessarily want one. Often, many boards don't have meetings in July, so that creates a complication. Some boards, I can't say I know your schedule, some boards will hold special meetings, some will do it in the last one in June, but we recommend as close to August 9th, within, give it a few days as you can get.
And I think we do have an early August meeting.
Well, I think we're going to make sure we have an August 1 meeting, one way or the other, because the other one would be the 8th, and that would be too tight. So we'll shoot for August 1.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both. Yes. And I hope you get better.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're moving on to board and superintendent activity. Who'd like to start? I will. So, in terms of what I did since I've last seen you, which has been a month, I've almost done, or I'm a little over halfway done with school visits. I just had my first conference this morning with one of my CIPSA principals, which, as a board, we've never done this before, so it was new for me as well as new for you. It was a very interesting conversation. I'm going to be curious as I move through the other four to see, if I find the same things you did, Sylvia, about the consistency. And then last night, the group was with the Hoffman board members. That's it. Thank you.
So I did attend the NGSS pilot materials, and I had done 2 of my CIPSA visits, and my one nugget from that I would share would be that I found the information in the SARC and the way looking at the SARC and comparing that to the CIPSA also had some value for me as I was reading through.
I'm going to Murdoch Portal tomorrow. I actually attended this 2x2 that Lori facilitated. She did a fabulous job. She's a natural at this. And we actually had a number of parents attend and provide input, so that was good. Other than that, we'll hopefully get the 2x2s or 2x1s of Cupertino set up here soon. Thanks.
Tomorrow morning I'll be going to West Valley for the community gathering at 8 a.m. Then evening with 2x1. Pretty much that's it. Previous week was for yesterday we went for dinner.
Sylvia?
Yeah, so I've done the CIPSAs at Dilworth, Blue Hills, and Lincoln, and yeah, it is really interesting to kind of, the first one I didn't have context, and then the next one, and then the third one, it's like, oh, okay, now I'm starting to see the patterns, and so it's been really eye-opening to see that. Also, just going to different school events, went to Eaton Science Fair. Lawson Middle School has a color clash, that was a lot of fun. And Regnart has a Discovery Day, which is like their big career day, and all the kids get to go progress from room to room, and all these people from the community came in to, so I actually met the granddaughter of William Regnart. So that was cool, because she was there as one of the presenters for Regnart Discovery Day. And then the Facilities and Enrollment Planning Subcommittee met this week, and so more conversations about what's happening with some of the things in San Jose and then some of the things up in the Stockmeyer area. So I think we're going to talk more about it at the in-house.
Okay, Craig?
No.
You haven't done anything.
Star Wars tomorrow. In case anybody wants to join me, let me know.
Okay, with that, I think we are agenda planning, right?
Thank you. In the Safe Routes to School presentation tonight, Cherie mentioned the May 21st meeting for the Regnart Creek Trails. So I don't know if there's any, because that does involve a potential safe route for a couple of our schools. I don't know if there's anything that should come before us, that there might be some advocacy that we could do around that, but just throwing that out there as a possibility if there's interest from any of my other board members. And then I also wanted to hit on, I would like us to have a wider discussion on safe routes. I think that's essential that comes back before us as an item agendized for discussion. discussion. And as a part of that, I would really like to make sure that we are looking at that rodeo education, safety training piece in terms of establishing what's out there on, I'd like to see part of that presentation include, you know, what the lay of the land looks like between our 6 jurisdictions, and if we've got pilots going on, you know, then whether or not there could, you know, it's really important to me that we have a conversation about what equity would look like in what is within our jurisdiction, which might be some of that education and safety piece. If we're going to bring it in as pilots, then, you know, wanting to look at that across all of our sites, and making sure that we have a plan for making sure that, you know, we're figuring out with our, because we're complicated by the 6 different jurisdictions, that we're figuring out how that looks across our one district, even though we're 6 cities. So that's my request there. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any agenda setting items?